Chapter 1105. Long Zitian's ambition could be seen from the golden dragon statue on the pagoda in the city. He compared himself to a true dragon hiding in the abyss. He had been silently accumulating power, waiting for the right time to soar into the sky. After Ji Tianqing entered the Flying Dragon City, he rushed towards the Flying Dragon Palace while looking up at the pagoda in the center of the city. He sneered in his heart. A hidden dragon in the abyss, dreaming of soaring into the sky and seizing the position of emperor? He. Long Zitian, if you didn't provoke me, you might really have a chance to defeat Long Yunshao and seize the throne. But unfortunately, I will definitely not let you succeed. Your dream of becoming an emperor can only be fulfilled in your next life. An hour later, he strolled outside the Flying Dragon Palace. The Flying Dragon Palace was one of Long Zitian's palaces, and also his true lair. The palace occupied a vast area and was extremely luxurious. Its entire body was resplendent in gold and jade, and it was extremely noble and imposing. Outside the wide palace gate, there was a divine dragon statue on the left and right, and 18 silver-armored guards were guarding it. On the 30-meter-tall gate, the words Flying Dragon Palace were written in gold. The palace was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, making the atmosphere seem festive. There was clamorous music coming from the Flying Dragon Palace. Obviously, countless guests had already arrived at the Flying Dragon Palace and were chatting happily inside. When Ji Tianqing walked towards the palace gate, there was still a line at the entrance. More than a dozen well-dressed and well-spoken leaders of wealthy families, as well as young talents in high spirits, were entering the Flying Dragon Palace one after another. These people all brought their attendants and guards, walked to the entrance, showed their invitations to the old butler guarding the door, and offered him a congratulatory gift. Only Ji Tianqing's extravagance was very shabby. He did not have a luxurious carriage or spirit beast, nor did he have any attendants or guards. When the crowd saw him coming to the banquet alone, they could not help but size him up a few times, revealing playful smiles, and secretly discussing with each other. Ji Tianqing ignored the strange gazes of those people, took out the invitation and handed it to the old butler, and offered him a congratulatory gift. He didn't prepare the so-called congratulatory gift in advance. He took out 10,000 spirit stones from his spatial ring at the last minute to make up the number. Every time the old steward accepted a gift, he would shout loudly that a certain person had come to congratulate him on his birthday and present him with gifts such as treasures and rare treasures. Most of the leaders and young talents of the wealthy families would offer valuable resources, treasures, and rare antiques. Even ordinary spirit stones, elixirs, magic tools, and other resources were bound to be astonishing. When it was Ji Tianqing's turn, the old housekeeper's expression changed. He frowned and looked at him with sharp eyes. Then, he shouted with a poker face, Ji Tianqing, territory lord of Tianshan region, is here to congratulate you on your birthday. Here is a gift of 10,000 spiritual stones. The moment the old steward shouted, all the guests outside the door stopped in their tracks, their faces full of astonishment. After everyone regained their senses, they all had complicated expressions on their faces as they looked at the entrance. Some people roared with laughter, some people discussed in disbelief, and some people had expressions of contempt and disdain as they whispered to each other. What did the old butler shout just now? Tianshan region lord? Ji Tianqing is here? Ji Tianqing? That's the youngest region lord, the number one genius of our family? The crown prince of the monarch mansion? Wow! Even he is here to congratulate the third prince? It seems that the third prince has a wide circle of friends and has a wide range of connections. I heard the old butler say 10,000 spiritual stones. Did I hear wrongly? I heard it too. Ji Tianqing is here to congratulate the third prince and only brought 10,000 spiritual stones as a gift. Ha 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 ha. Isn't this too funny? He is the region lord of Tianshan region, how can he be so stingy? Heh heh. This is going to be a good show. Ji Tianqing is obviously trying to embarrass the third prince. It seems that Ji Tianqing is not here with good intentions. All the guests discussed animatedly as they looked at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions. After the old butler accepted the gift, he expressionlessly extended his hand and invited him into the palace. Ji Tianqing ignored everyone's strange gazes as he stepped through the door and entered the Flying Dragon Palace. Inside the door was a spacious courtyard. On the left was a beautiful garden with a pavilion, a small mountain, a small lake and a bamboo forest. Many young talents were gathered in groups of 3 to 5 as they strolled and chatted in the garden. On the right was a plaza where hundreds of guests were gathered. They were chatting and exchanging greetings with each other. The atmosphere was very lively. There were many white jade tea tables and tables placed around the plaza. On top of them were rich spirit fruits, pastries, spirit tea, wine and so on. They were for the guests to use as they pleased. Many young and beautiful maids were respectfully guarding the plaza, serving the guests at any time. It was now afternoon and everyone could move around as they pleased. Tonight's banquet was the main event. Ji Tianqing calmly walked through the plaza and headed straight for the main hall at the back of the plaza. That magnificent main hall was the main venue of tonight's birthday banquet. Of course, only those with noble status could enter the main hall. Ordinary disciples of aristocratic families could only wait in the plaza. When Ji Tianqing entered the main hall, there were already hundreds of people gathered in the hall. They sat on both sides of the main hall and were chatting in low voices. There were more than 40 people on the left side. More than 30 of them were the leaders of first-rate aristocratic families, and more than 10 of them were the city lords of prosperous cities. Of course, the 4 experts sitting at the very top were the most distinguished. They were the 4 region lords of the human races in 9 regions. They were all at the 2nd or 3rd level of the soul cultivation realm. On the right side of the main hall sat more than 50 people. They were all famous young talents of the central state and the imperial princes of the monarch residence. Ji Tianqing looked over and saw a few people he recognized. There were the 3 imperial princes, Ling Yi Xian, Lu Zikang, and Lu Ziyuan. In addition, there was the chief disciple of Green Crane Valley's sword faction, Di Jianqing, and the city lord of Smoke Wing City, Qian Shanjinwu. These 2 people had participated in the Heavenly Stellar Region Lord's election with him. They had interacted for a few days and knew each other. When Ji Tianqing sized up the crowd, everyone stopped talking and looked at him. Seeing him appear, Ling Yi Xian, Lu Zikang, Lu Ziyuan, and the other 8 imperial princes were stunned. Their eyes were a little complicated. Many governors and realm masters who hadn't seen Ji Tianqing before frowned slightly as they sized him up with scrutinizing eyes. As for the famous young talents, they looked at him with burning eyes. Many of them had fighting spirit surging in their eyes as if they wanted to compete with him. After a while, everyone came back to their senses. Many leaders, city lords, and imperial princes stood up to greet him. Even 2 of the 4 domain lords stood up and greeted him respectfully. Those 2 were the region lords of the Yangon region and the horizontal water region. Ji Tianqing returned their greetings. After a few words of greeting, he sat down beside them. Chapter 1106. As the host, Long Zitian was not present. The people in the main hall could only exchange greetings and talk about some things in Zhongzhou. Some people talked about the recent situation in Zhongzhou. Only 2 of the 3 ancient families were left. The Murong family's forces had been suppressed by various forces and had been shrinking their defenses. Their forces had been weakened and they had become unusually low-key. The Murong family did not even send anyone to attend the 3rd prince's birthday banquet. Some people sighed. The Duanmu family had been destroyed and the Murong family had gradually withered. Only the Cloud Spirit Palace was still as powerful as before. When the Duanmu family's destruction was mentioned, many people secretly looked at Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions. Ji Tianqing had destroyed the Duanmu family and killed Murong Lingfeng, the eldest son of the Murong family. These things were no longer a secret. The leaders of the various families, as well as the region lords and city lords, had all heard the news from various channels. Everyone was deeply curious and fearful of Ji Tianqing's strength and methods. Moreover, everyone knew that Ji Tianqing had always been close to the emperor, Long Yunshao. In this way, Ji Tianqing and the third prince were enemies. How could he dare to attend the banquet in Flying Dragon City alone? Looking at his fearless appearance, could it be that he had other motives for attending the banquet in Flying Dragon Palace? Thinking of this, many nobles and experts secretly stared at Ji Tianqing. Even the four realm masters were looking at Ji Tianqing from time to time, quietly sizing him up. At this time, the young geniuses on the right side of the main hall were talking about the demon clan's rampage. Someone mentioned that Yun Yao had been kidnapped by the Demon King a year ago. At that time, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had gotten married and were going to hold a big banquet in Zhongzhou City. However, they were attacked by the Demon King midway. This incident had caused a stir in Zhongzhou and everyone in the world knew about it. It had been the hottest topic in Zhongzhou for nearly a year. Now that everyone had seen Ji Tianqing, the person involved, with their own eyes, they secretly discussed this matter. A prince mentioned that Ji Tianqing had broken into the northern desert alone and snuck into the Fiend Emperor's lair alone to save Yun Yao. After hearing the news, a few young geniuses wore looks of disbelief and exclaimed. This was especially true for Di Jianqing and Qianshan Junwu, who had competed with Ji Tianqing before. When they heard this news, they were even more shocked. The discussions of the young elites overshadowed the conversations of the nobles and experts. The city lords and the patriarchs of the wealthy families all took over this topic and began to discuss it. Unbelievable. Prince Tianqing's strength and methods are truly unfathomable and unbelievable. Prince Tianqing is indeed worthy of being the number one genius of our clan. He can actually create such a miracle. It's said that the Devil Clan's lair in the northern desert has a perilous terrain and numerous experts. It's extremely dangerous. I didn't expect Domain Lord Tianqing to be able to advance and retreat as he pleases. It's really miraculous. Not only were many city lords and patriarchs praising and admiring of Ji Tianqing, but they also admired him. Even Horizontal Shui and Yangon Territorial Lord had a whole new level of respect for Ji Tianqing and flattered him. With Domain Lord Tianqing's current strength and methods, I'm afraid he's not only the number one genius of our clan, but also the number one genius of Middle Ground, right? No. It should be said that Domain Lord Tianqing is now the number one genius of the continent. Domain Lord Tianqing is only 20 years old, but he already has such powerful strength and has created countless miracles. He's simply a peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. Many people in the main hall praised Ji Tianqing and were in awe of him. However, more than half of them were rather critical of this, and their expressions were slightly disdainful. It was even to the extent that they muttered and criticized in secret. TSK. There are billions of martial artists in our clan, and countless geniuses emerge every year. However, how many of them can become top experts in the end? Who can sit in this main hall today is not a martial arts genius. So what if he's extremely talented? If he dies at a young age, won't everything be for naught? The root of humans' weakness is that they like to listen to hearsay and deliberately exaggerate things. Who would believe the so-called miracles and legends without seeing it with their own eyes? The real person is sitting here, and this group of people is still shamelessly flattering him. Aren't they ashamed? These people did not care about Ji Tianqing's presence at all and whispered to each other. Some people, while criticizing, kept glancing at Ji Tianqing to observe his expression and reaction. Ji Tianqing had been sitting indifferently. Even if he heard the people's discussion, his expression did not change and he completely ignored them. This was because he knew very well that most of the people sitting in the main hall were the third prince's subordinates and supporters. They were all hostile to him. At this time, the Shangchuan district leader, who was sitting above Ji Tianqing, suddenly thought of something and said seriously, as everyone knows, every time an expert advances to the soul-refining realm, there will be a vision of heaven and earth. The more talented a genius is, the more shocking and bizarre the vision of heaven and earth will be. When I broke through to the soul-refining realm, it was midnight. There was only starlight in the sky, and it disappeared after 100 breaths. I'm ashamed to say that the vision of heaven and earth that I caused when I advanced could only be considered as a normal vision. However, I heard that more than a year ago, when the third prince broke through to the soul-refining realm, there was a vision of golden lightning breaking through the sky. That night, a golden lightning tore through the sky and lit up the entire Central Plains. The 100 district leader, who was sitting beside him, nodded quickly and said with a smile, "Yes." At that time, I happened to be in Central Plains. That night, I saw the vision of golden lightning breaking through the sky with my own eyes. Such an earth-shattering vision is very rare. It hasn't appeared in the past 300 years. From this, we can see that the third prince's talent is the best in the past 300 years. His future is limitless. At this point, the 100 district leader deliberately glanced at Ji Tianqing and asked with a faint smile, "District leader Tianqing, you are recognized as the #1 genius of our tribe. Now, you have also broken through to the soul-refining realm. With your talent, the vision of heaven and earth when you break through to the soul-refining realm should be earth-shattering and unprecedented, right?" There was no doubt that the 100 district leader was making trouble in public and taking the opportunity to provoke Ji Tianqing. Everyone in the main hall immediately quieted down and looked at Ji Tianqing in unison. Many people revealed curious and expectant looks, but even more people were waiting to see a good show, taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. Ji Tianqing had been resting with his eyes closed, as if he didn't pay attention to the discussions and conversations of the crowd. However, now that the 100 district leader had pointed the spearhead at him and the hundreds of people present were staring at him, he had to respond. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he slowly opened his eyes and glanced at the 100 district leader expressionlessly. He said calmly, "When I broke through to the soul-refining realm, I was in a secret realm and didn't notice any vision of heaven and earth." Hearing his reply, everyone in the hall revealed disappointed expressions and started whispering to each other. The 100 district leader suddenly smiled playfully and shook his head. "So that means that Tianqing didn't cause a vision of heaven and earth. I can't believe that when the #1 genius of the human race broke through to the soul-refining realm, there wasn't even a vision of heaven and earth. Could it be that the heavens have forgotten about you?" When the people in the hall heard his words, they immediately burst into laughter. Their eyes were filled with mockery, and they were taking pleasure in his misfortune. Everyone knew that the vision of heaven and earth was a change of the way of heaven. It couldn't vary from person to person and was fair to all living things. Chapter 1107. When Ji Tianqing had broken through to the spirit-refining realm, it had been in the Eastern Mountain residence. After reaching the spirit-refining realm, he had only been observing the spirit sword and the changes in his own strength. He had indeed not seen any worldly phenomena. Afterwards, he had not paid much attention to this matter and had not felt anything unusual. Now that he thought about it, he also felt that it was a little strange. Logically speaking, with his innate talent and potential, he should have caused a world-shaking phenomenon. Could it be that the Eastern Mountain residence is an alternate dimension, and the Eastern Mountain sovereign has used extraordinary methods to isolate it from the world? Or could it be that the Tao of Kenshin that I cultivate is different from ordinary martial arts, which is why I did not cause any worldly phenomena? He silently analyzed in his heart and felt that there were only these two possibilities. When everyone in the hall saw that he was silent and deep in thought, they laughed even louder. Many young geniuses who were unconvinced also seemed to see the hope of surpassing him, and they all revealed looks of anticipation and pride. Ha ha ha, what #1 genius of the human race? When breaking through to the spirit-refining realm, he did not even cause any worldly phenomena. I think his reputation is all exaggerated. Looks like his genius title will stop at the spirit-refining realm. His potential has already been exhausted, and there won't be much progress in the future. I feel that he can only be considered the #1 genius below the spirit-refining realm. As for above the spirit-refining realm, he can't even be compared to His Highness the Third Prince. Not only were the young geniuses discussing, the 100-stream domain lord and Shangchuan domain lord were also discussing with playful expressions. Looking at the current situation, the title of the #1 genius of the human race will soon change hands. Yes, becoming famous early does not mean that your martial arts achievements will be high in the future. It is also possible that you will die prematurely, or disappear into the crowd. Ji Tianqing could ignore these young geniuses and did not care about any of their opinions. After all, he was not on the same level as them, just like how a lion would not pay attention to a mouse jumping in front of it. However, he could not ignore the criticisms of the 100-stream domain lord and Shangchuan domain lord, nor could he swallow his anger and pretend not to hear. He slowly turned his head to look at the 100-stream domain lord beside him, his eyes staring coldly at him as he said expressionlessly, "100-stream domain lord, you should shut up." His voice wasn't loud, yet it was low and sonorous, and it contained an indisputable dignity. The 100-basin master stopped talking and turned to look at him. With a mocking smile, he asked, "Ji Tianqing, what do you mean? Was he angry out of humiliation? Or are you feeling guilty?" Ji Tianqing smirked, revealing a sinister sneer. "You're too noisy. I think you shouldn't be sitting next to me. You should change your seat." The 100-basin master was stunned. He frowned and asked, "Ji Tianqing, what are you trying to do? This is His Highness the Third Prince's Flying Dragon Palace, you dare." Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing sneered and reached out his hand to grab his neck. "If you're so lively, why don't you go outside and wait?" As he spoke, a dazzling white light of divine soul gushed out of his palm, releasing an incomparably violent power. Although his palm didn't change, in everyone's eyes, it was like a dragon's claw, containing the power to destroy the heavens and earth. It was impossible to defend against. The 100-basin master sensed that something was wrong. He instinctively used his qi to defend himself and punched at Ling Xian's palm. However, Ling Xian's speed was extremely fast. With a swoosh, he grabbed the 100-basin master's neck. The 100-basin master's body froze on the spot. He was suppressed by an invisible divine soul and could not resist at all. Ji Tianqing picked him up easily like he was picking up a chick. He shook his hand and threw him to the entrance of the palace. Swoosh! The 100-basin master flew out in an arc in the air and landed at the entrance of the palace. With a plop, he hit the ground and rolled a few times before coming to a stop. When he got up from the ground, his hair was disheveled, his golden crown was askew, and his clothes were untidy. He looked extremely embarrassed. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he was thrown out of the palace by Ji Tianqing. This was a great humiliation. He had never experienced such humiliation in his life. At that moment, the 100-basin master was so angry that his entire body shook like a sieve. His face turned red and purple, and the blood in his body flowed in reverse. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. "Ji Tianqing. You've gone too far." The 100-basin master roared in exasperation. He clenched his fists so tightly that they made cracking sounds. His entire body emitted a murderous aura. The hundreds of nobles and young elites in the hall were all dumbfounded. Everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Their bodies were so stiff that they looked like they had turned into stone. The palace was silent. No one would have thought that Ji Tianqing would be so arrogant and powerful. His way of dealing with criticism and provocation was so simple and violent. The Shangchuan territory master came to his senses and was instantly enraged. He pointed at Ji Tianqing and scolded, "Ji Tianqing. You've got guts. Today is the third prince's birthday. How dare you cause trouble in public? You're insulting the third prince." The 100-basin master is a loyal official of the imperial court. You've been serving the imperial court for hundreds of years. As the new territory master, you're a junior. How dare you disregard seniority? The Shangchuan territory master was still haranguing Ji Tianqing for his crimes. Ji Tianqing slowly turned his head and looked at him with a sharp gaze. He stretched out a finger and sneered at him. "I only need one finger to press you to the ground. Do you believe me?" The Shangchuan territory master was at a loss for words. He swallowed all his resentment and anger back into his stomach. He didn't dare to make another sound. He was furious, but he didn't dare to do anything. He could only suppress it in his heart. He had seen Ji Tianqing's terrifying strength. How could he still dare to provoke Ji Tianqing? He didn't want to follow in the footsteps of the 100 Basin Master. He didn't want to be defeated by Ji Tianqing in public and lose face. Since he couldn't defeat Ji Tianqing, and he didn't dare to provoke Ji Tianqing, he could only swallow his anger and suppress all his anger and humiliation in the bottom of his heart. He glared at Ji Tianqing angrily. He was so angry that his body trembled. He couldn't calm down for a long time. Ji Tianqing ignored him and the 100 Basin Master. He sat down leisurely and continued to rest with his eyes closed. Looking at his calm and leisurely expression, it was as if nothing had happened. Everyone in the main hall was once again shocked by his arrogance and strength. They were dumbfounded and speechless. Oh my God! How can this guy be so strong? The 100 Basin Master, who is at LV3 soul cultivation stage, couldn't even fight back and was thrown out in public. He's too arrogant, too arrogant. Not only did he throw the 100 Basin Master out of the door, but he also said that he could defeat the Shangchuan Territory Master with one finger. Oh my God! I've lived for 300 years, and this is the first time I've seen such an arrogant person. He's crazy. The rich and powerful in the hall were so shocked that their hearts were beating wildly. They exclaimed in their hearts. The young elites were even more shocked. They were so shocked by Ji Tianqing that their mouths and tongues were dry. Their blood was boiling, and their faces were flushed with excitement. Chapter 1108. Everything happened too suddenly, and the scene was too explosive. It took a long time for everyone to recover from their shock. No one would have thought that just a moment ago, everyone was still criticizing Ji Tianqing, discussing and mocking him without restraint. In the next moment, he threw the 100 Domain Lord out of the door with one hand and scared the Shangchuan Territorial Lord away with one sentence. Such a simple and violent method successfully shocked everyone. The two territorial lords were so humiliated that they vomited blood on the spot, but they did not dare to attack him. They could only run out of the hall like stray dogs with their tails between their legs. The other wealthy families and young elites did not even have the right to challenge Ji Tianqing, so how could they dare to make irresponsible remarks? The main hall quieted down. Everyone was silent, and they looked straight ahead. Even if they were shocked and could not help but discuss with their companions, they did so secretly through voice transmission, not daring to make a sound. After all, Ji Tianqing had already thrown the 100 Domain Lord out of the door because he thought he was too noisy. If the others dared to make any noise, they would be crushed to death by Ji Tianqing. If it were others, it would be fine. No matter how strong they were, at least they had to abide by the law and respect the ways of the world. However, Ji Tianqing was a temperamental and unrestrained guy. He was not afraid of anything, and everything he did was earth-shattering. This guy even dared to barge into the Devil Emperor's lair alone. Was there anything in the world that he did not dare to do? Many wealthy families and young elites were guessing that even if the third prince was present, Ji Tianqing would not give him any face. Thinking of this, everyone was very afraid of Ji Tianqing. They were incomparably respectful. The wealthy families sitting near him were restless, as if they were sitting on pins and needles. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing did not cause any trouble. He had been resting with his eyes closed. On the surface, he looked calm, but in fact, he was secretly releasing his soul energy, extending it to the surroundings to investigate the situation. In just 15 minutes, he had investigated more than half of the Flying Dragon Palace. He had a clear understanding of the Flying Dragon Palace's layout. His soul energy found at the 100 Domain Lord and the Shangchuan Territorial Lord did not leave the Flying Dragon Palace after leaving the hall. The two of them passed through several courtyards and entered the third courtyard. Of course, the two's expressions were extremely ugly. They were furious to the extreme, cursing as they walked. There was an exquisite and luxurious palace in the third courtyard. That palace was called the Hidden Dragon Palace Hall. It seemed to be Long Zai Tian's bedroom, and its defenses were extremely tight. Not only did the Hidden Dragon Palace have a powerful soul-grade array formation, but there were also over 100 guards guarding it. No one could get close to it. The two domain lords arrived at the entrance of the Hidden Dragon Palace. After showing the domain lord's golden seal, they were led into the palace by the guards. Originally, the Hidden Dragon Palace was protected by a soul-grade array. Even a soul refinement realm expert would not be able to see what was going on inside the palace. However, Ji Tianqing's soul was different from ordinary cultivators. The power of his soul was incomparably strong, comparable to that of a cultivator at the 6th level of the spirit refining realm. He was able to break through the grand formation of the Hidden Dragon Palace and investigate the situation inside the palace with all his might. At the head of the hall sat a tall, burly, and handsome young man with a resolute face. This person wore a golden robe with dragon and phoenix patterns and a golden dragon crown on his head. His pair of phoenix eyes contained a deep and vast meaning that could see through people's hearts. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this person. He recognized him at a glance. This was the third prince, Long Zai Tian. The 100 Flow Domain Lord and the Shengchuan Domain Lord entered the hall and stood still. After paying their respects to Tianqing, they recounted what had just happened with a face full of shame and indignation. After Long Zai Tian heard what had happened, a trace of anger appeared on his face. His eyes surged with a cold light. He frowned and thought for a moment, then opened his mouth to appease the two domain lords. He said in a low and dignified voice, "Calm down and calm down your anger. Ji Tianqing has always been arrogant and overbearing. You provoked and insulted him in public, so of course he would have such a reaction. But don't worry, I have already made arrangements and preparations. He dares to come to Flying Dragon City, so it's obvious that he wants to humiliate me. How can I let him be so arrogant? Later, you two go to another courtyard and wait until tonight's banquet begins. Try not to meet Ji Tianqing face to face. As for Ji Tianqing, I will teach him a lesson. Even if he doesn't die, he will lose a layer of skin." Hearing Long Zai Tian's words, the two domain lords' anger subsided. They hurriedly complimented, "Your Highness is farsighted. You will definitely punish that thief. With your Highness' resourcefulness, sooner or later you will get rid of that bastard and put him to death." Long Zai Tian nodded slightly and waved his hand at the two, indicating that they should leave and rest. After the two domain lords left the Hidden Dragon Palace, Long Zai Tian's face became gloomy. It became darker and darker, and the cold light in his eyes became sharper and sharper. "Ji Tianqing, oh Ji Tianqing, I didn't expect your lowly life to be so tenacious. You can actually live until now. When you and Yunyao got married, I used all my means and schemes to set up an inescapable net in Central State. I wanted to turn your wedding into a funeral. Who would have thought that the Demon Emperor would suddenly descend and personally attack the wedding's pillar of support, kidnapping Yunyao? I thought that you would definitely die if you broke into the northern desert alone to save Yunyao. It was impossible for you to survive. I didn't expect that not only did you come back alive, but you also saved Yunyao." Long Zai Tian muttered to himself. He secretly clenched his fists and cursed in a cold and resentful tone, "Despicable little bastard, I can't let you run wild anymore. This time you came to Flying Dragon City, I won't let you leave alive." After that, he pondered in silence for a while. Then, he waved his hand at the corner of the hall and ordered, "Tian Du, go and get that thing for me." In the dark corner of the hall, there was a 2-meter-tall, red-haired young man standing tall. This young man looked like a demon. His whole body was muscular, his aura was fierce and wild, and his pupils were blood-red. He looked exactly like Tuoba Roy, but in fact, he was the combination of the heaven-swallowing beast and Tuoba Roy, the Tian Du puppet. When the Tian Du puppet heard Long Zai Tian's order, he quickly bowed and said yes. Then, he turned and walked to the corner of the hall. On the stone wall covered with patterns, he cast a spell and unlocked a seal. Swoosh! A stone door opened on the wall, revealing a dark entrance to a secret room. The Tiandu puppet stepped into the secret room and disappeared into the darkness. After about 100 breaths, the Tiandu puppet walked out of the secret room and returned to the hall with a black iron box the size of a wash basin. He held the black iron box with both hands and presented it to Long Zai Tian. Long Zai Tian took the iron box and put it into his spatial ring. He instructed the Tiandu puppet, "You stay here and prevent anyone from approaching the secret room. I need to make a trip to the main hall to greet the guests." Chapter 1109. Everything that happened in the Hidden Dragon Palace was clearly investigated by Ji Tianqing. His soul power saw the two domain lords and Long Zai Tian, and also heard their conversation. He had previously guessed that the 100-flow domain lord and Shangchuan domain lord deliberately provoked and ridiculed him, most likely because they were instructed by Long Zai Tian. After listening to the conversation between the three of them, he was even more certain of his guess. In addition, he also heard the conversation between Long Zai Tian and the heavenly puppet clearly. When the heavenly puppet opened the array on the wall and opened the door of the secret room, he carefully stared at the heavenly puppet's movements and memorized the method to break the array. His keen intuition told him that the secret room was very important to Long Zai Tian, and must be hiding treasures or secrets. As for the mysterious box that the heavenly puppet took out from the secret room, he only paid a little attention to it and did not take it too seriously. In his opinion, the thing that Long Zai Tian was willing to take out to show to the public must not be too important. The real core treasure and secret must be hidden in the most hidden secret room. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing made up his mind to find the right opportunity to explore the secret room and see if he could find any clues. He sat in the main hall for about half a quarter of an hour before he heard the voices of the guards outside the door. "Greetings, Your Highness." The dozen or so guards guarding the door all knelt down in unison, and their tone was very respectful. The main hall was quiet, and hearing the voices outside the door, everyone looked at the door. Under everyone's gaze, the third Prince Long Zai Tian, dressed in a golden robe and wearing a golden dragon crown, stepped into the main hall. Behind him was a Sky Origin Realm Guard commander, wearing a golden armor, with a dignified face, and holding a gray-black treasure box in his hands. Seeing Long Zai Tian arrive, many guests breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly got up to salute. "Greetings, Your Highness." "Greetings, Your Highness." Not only many young elites and wealthy nobles, even the horizontal water domain lord and Yong'an domain lord stood up and bowed to Long Zai Tian. Only Ji Tianqing remained seated. His expression was calm as he indifferently sized up Long Zai Tian and the mysterious treasure box in the hands of the guard commander. Long Zai Tian nodded with a smile on his face, and waved his hand to indicate that everyone was excused and seated. His performance was impeccable. Not only did he display the majesty and nobility of the imperial clan, but he also appeared amiable and approachable. Everyone had a good impression of him. Under the gazes of the crowd, he walked to the head of the hall and sat down on the golden throne inlaid with jade. The guard commander held the grayish-black treasure box and stood upright beside him. Long Zai Tian looked around. His gaze swept across everyone and was full of presence. Even though his eyes swept over Ji Tianqing and saw that there were 2 empty seats beside Ji Tianqing, he didn't seem to notice any clues and his expression remained the same. After a while, he opened his mouth and said, "Everyone, today is this king's 40th birthday. Thank you for taking the time to come to this banquet. It is this king's honor that everyone can come to Flying Dragon City. It also brings light to Flying Dragon Palace. This king has not held a birthday banquet for 10 years. Today, I will take this opportunity to gather with everyone and get to know each other. After all, everyone is the pillar of my clan, the mainstay of the central region." Long Zai Tian said a lot of polite words, making everyone smile. The atmosphere in the hall also became lively and cheerful. A few days ago, a big shot learned that today is this king's birthday and sent a congratulatory gift to this king in advance. Unfortunately, that big shot is busy with government affairs and can't come to this banquet. This king is quite regretful." Hearing his words, everyone showed a look of interest and guessed who the big shot he was talking about was. The horizontal water domain lord's status was higher, so he asked tentatively, "May I ask your highness the third prince, the big shot you are talking about, is it Murong family lord?" Long Zai Tian frowned slightly, but immediately returned to normal. Shaking his head with a smile, he said, "It seems that everyone is very interested in that big shot. Although this is not the main point, since everyone has doubts, this king will say it directly. That big shot is the divine general who guards the East Sea." The horizontal water domain lord suddenly realized and quickly nodded, "So it is that big shot." Ji Tianqing was expressionless, but when he heard Long Zai Tian's words, his eyes flashed with a touch of doubt. The divine general who guards the East Sea? Isn't that Xiao Han? Could it be that Xiao Han has a close relationship with Long Zai Tian? No. I have interacted with Xiao Han before. This person's style of doing things is upright, fair and strict. He doesn't look like someone who is in cahoots with Long Zai Tian. Moreover, if he was in cahoots with Long Zai Tian, he wouldn't have helped me enter the East Sea Imperial Court. At this time, Long Zai Tian continued, "The gift sent by the Divine General is very special. It was left behind by a powerhouse 1,000 years ago. It is very mysterious. Unfortunately, this congratulatory gift was placed in a treasure box, and there was an ancient formation seal on the box. The skilled craftsmen and formation Dao grandmasters under my command racked their brains and methods, but they still couldn't crack the array and open the treasure box. No one knows what kind of treasure is inside this treasure box with 1,000 years of history. This king feels that it is a pity, so today, I will take this opportunity to take out this thing for everyone to evaluate and help this king brainstorm. Everyone here is my clan's top powerhouses and heroes. This king believes that with everyone's talent, you will be able to help this king open the treasure box." Hearing this, everyone looked at the mysterious treasure box in the hands of the guard commander. Everyone showed a puzzled and curious look as they carefully observed it. The grayish-black treasure box was the size of a wash basin. It was octagonal in shape and looked simple and modeled. It exuded an ancient aura. The surface of the treasure box was engraved with exquisite patterns, but because it was too old, it had long been modeled and blurred. Even so, everyone could deeply feel that the treasure box contained a vast and mighty power, as heavy and majestic as a mountain. Even if they couldn't see the treasure inside the treasure box, everyone could be sure that it was an extraordinary item. Unfortunately, the treasure box was sealed by a powerful array and no one could open it. This made everyone's hearts itch and they couldn't help but want to open the treasure box to investigate. Seeing that everyone was attracted by the treasure box, Long Zai Tian revealed a playful smile and said, "Everyone, this mysterious gift will be the auspicious item for this king's birthday. Today, if anyone here can break the seal of the treasure box and successfully open the treasure box, this king will give this gift to him as a reward." When everyone heard this, they became even more excited and expectant. Not only were the young elites eager to get into action, even the older nobles were eager to give it a try, their eyes burning with passion. In everyone's eyes, the gift that Dong Lin Divine General gave to the third prince must be a priceless treasure. If anyone could break the seal in front of everyone and open the treasure box, not only would they obtain this treasure, they would also have a lot of face and fame in the central state. Chapter 11:10. Everyone in the hall began to whisper to each other. Many people were watching from the sidelines, but there were also some who were eager to give it a try because they were confident in their attainments and formations. A young man in a white robe was the first to stand up. He cupped his hands towards Long Zai Tian and said, "Your Highness the Third Prince, since all the fellow Taoists and seniors are watching from the sidelines, this humble one is willing to try to break the formation first, throwing a brick to attract jade." Seeing that this person was about to make a move, everyone in the hall looked at him and began to discuss. This is the genius of the Yi family in Su City. He has reached the 6th level of Sky Origin stage at such a young age. He is quite famous in the central state. It is said that this Yifeng is not only a martial arts genius, but also an array genius. A few months ago, he fought with an array master and defeated him. Yes. I have also heard of that matter. That is an array master who has been famous for over 100 years. Yifeng is indeed very talented. His future is limitless. Many guests in the hall, after learning about the background of the young man in white robe, let out a burst of exclamations. Their eyes were full of expectation. Long Zitian nodded slightly and ordered the guard to place the mysterious box in the middle of the hall, on a white jade table. Yifeng walked to the table and showed a confident smile. He pretended to be modest to everyone and then began to cast the array to break the seal. His feet moved in a mysterious way, and his hands formed a spell. He constantly waved his hands and shot out streaks of dazzling light into the box. His pace kept increasing as he walked in circles around the white jade table. His hands moved faster and faster, dazzling the eyes of the people. Everyone in the hall stared at him, waiting to see how he would break the array. Many powerful people saw Yifeng's array skills and nodded their heads to express their appreciation. The young men all had a look of envy and admiration. Even the two area leaders had a whole new level of respect for Yifeng's performance. They whispered to each other and nodded their heads in praise. Only Ji Tianqing did not have any reaction. He looked at the mysterious box expressionlessly, completely ignoring Yifeng. Unknowingly, half an hour had passed. Yifeng was still circling around the white jade table, desperately casting a spell and injecting his majestic true essence into the mysterious box. He had used almost all of his means, but the mysterious treasure box was still motionless, and the sealing array did not loosen in the slightest. After a long period of continuous casting and a high-intensity infusion of true essence, his true essence was quickly exhausted, and his strength was becoming weaker and weaker. Everyone could clearly see that his face was getting paler and paler. Large beads of sweat continuously appeared on his forehead, and his footsteps were somewhat staggered. Everyone's eyes and expressions changed from the initial excitement and anticipation to doubt and disappointment. It was even to the extent that some young geniuses who were dissatisfied or envious of him even seized this opportunity to mercilessly ridicule and criticize him. The originally quiet main hall gradually became lively and clamorous. Everyone's voices were incessant. The pressure on Yifeng grew greater and greater. In the end, his physical strength was unable to bear it, and his true essence was also difficult to sustain. He had to continuously cast spells. His complexion was pale as he gasped for breath. Facing Long Zitian, he cupped his hands and saluted, "Your Highness the Third Prince, your humble servant is untalented and was unable to break the array. I have disappointed you. The sealing array of your congratulatory gift is really mysterious and terrifying. It is definitely not something that a Sky Origin stage martial artist can break." Finished speaking, Yifeng's expression was gloomy as he left and returned to his seat to rest. However, his words brought a huge impact and shock to everyone present. Oh my God! Even Yifeng, this array master, can't break it? That sealing array on the treasure box, isn't it a Sky Origin stage array? Is it a spirit stage array? Yifeng said that a Sky Origin stage martial artist can't break it. Is it really a spirit stage array? Humph. I think Yifeng is deliberately exaggerating to give himself a way out. If a Sky Origin stage martial artist can't break the array, doesn't that mean only a spirit refining stage martial artist can try? Everyone in the main hall was discussing animatedly, and their expressions were very complicated. Those young geniuses who had been clamoring fiercely before, at this moment, seeing that Yifeng was unable to break it, all of them gave up. No one dared to try again. Only some of the rich and powerful families, after discussing and considering for a while, one person stood out. This was a short and fat middle-aged man. He was the head of one of the top rich and powerful families in the central state. He had the strength of Sky Origin Stage 8. He bowed to Long Zitian and walked to the side of the white jade table with a serious expression. He carefully observed the treasure box for a long time before he started to break the array. Everyone recognized this head of the family. Not only was he powerful, he was also an array master who had been famous for more than 100 years. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation as they stared at him, hoping that he would be able to break the array. He had seen the process of Yifeng breaking the array and knew that Yifeng's method was useless. So, he took a different approach and tried to use another rare method to break the array. Many people saw the clues and realized that he was using a special method to break the array. They all exclaimed and their hearts were filled with anticipation. However, this head of the family had just started to cast the array when he touched the seal on the treasure box. Swoosh! The mysterious treasure box lit up with a dazzling flame and exploded with a violent and terrifying power. It immediately sent this person flying and he fell to the ground in a sorry state. When he crawled up from the ground, his hair and clothes were burned and curled. He looked extremely sorry and caused everyone to roar with laughter. Without a doubt, this head of the family also failed. He was also hit by the backlash of the seal and injured his internal organs. Amidst the laughter of the crowd, he left the stage in humiliation. When the hall quieted down, no one dared to try to break the array again. Everyone was watching, discussing, and exclaiming at the power of the seal. Long Zai Tian looked around the hall and looked at the Yong and Region Lord with a playful gaze. He said with a smile, "It seems that only cultivators in the spirit refining realm can break the seal of the treasure box. Region Lord, I have heard that your array skills are superb and that you are a world-famous array master. It seems that this seat's gift must belong to you. You must not refuse." Suddenly, everyone turned their heads to look at the Yong and Region Lord. The Yong and Region Lord's expression changed. His heart skipped a beat and he became restless. In reality, his array skills could only be considered excellent. He was definitely not a world-famous array master. But among the guests present, there were only 3 spirit refining realm cultivators. Other than Ji Tianqing and the Lord of Horizontal Water Realm, his array skills were the strongest. Long Zai Tian asked him to break the array in front of everyone. This was clearly to embarrass him. Thinking of this, he looked expressionlessly at the mysterious treasure box and thought to himself, "This guy Long Zai Tian really doesn't have good intentions. He knows that I intend to get closer to the emperor, so he deliberately suppressed me in front of everyone to make me lose face. If I don't dare to break the array, he will take the opportunity to do me a favor and rope me in." Chapter 11:11. How could a person who could become the ruler of a region be mediocre? The Yangon region ruler had always been low-key, but he was also shrewd and wise. Of course, he could see clearly what the third prince, Long Zaitian, was thinking. On the surface, it seemed that Long Zaitian was flattering him in public, giving him face and vanity. If he could really break the seal of the treasure box, not only would he get the treasure, but he would also be recognized as an array grandmaster. But the problem was that he had no confidence in breaking the array. Everyone in the hall was looking at him, waiting for him to break the array. If he didn't dare to do it, everyone would laugh their heads off, and it would be even more humiliating. At this moment, the Yangon region ruler hated Long Zaitian very much, and he cursed his 18 generations of ancestors in his heart. Of course, it didn't include the emperor. Long Zaitian looked at him with a smile, and the guests in the hall looked at him with anticipation. They were discussing enthusiastically, constantly complimenting him, and egging him on to break the array. The Yangon region ruler could only bite the bullet and reluctantly squeeze out a smile. He was about to get up and walk into the hall. Ji Tianqing, who had been sitting beside him, saw his expression and reaction clearly. Just as the Yangon region ruler was about to get up, he suddenly stood up and said expressionlessly, "It's just a soul-level array. How difficult is it to break it?" The noisy hall suddenly quieted down, and everyone looked at him with complicated eyes. No one would have thought that he would actually step forward bravely at this moment, moreover speak such arrogant words, so arrogant. He ignored everyone's strange eyes and turned to look at the Yangon region ruler beside him. He said calmly, "Yangon region ruler, You are an array grandmaster. This kind of low-level array, you don't need to break it. I can break it easily. The Yangon region lord was startled. He quickly sat back in his seat and heaved a sigh of relief. He showed a relieved look and looked deeply at Ji Tianqing, his eyes filled with deep gratitude. Tianqing region ruler, thank you for your help. I can't thank you enough. He secretly sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing to thank him in a sincere tone. Ji Tianqing only nodded slightly and didn't say anything. He walked towards the white jade table in the middle of the hall. Everyone's gazes gathered on him, revealing looks of doubt and anticipation as they whispered to each other. What is Ji Tianqing trying to do? The third prince is clearly asking the Yong and region lord to break the formation. Why is he stealing the limelight? This fellow has just humiliated Bai Lu and the Shangchuan territorial lord, and now he wants to suppress the Yong and territorial lord? He is too arrogant. Even 2 array Dao grandmasters were unable to break the array, and he actually did not put it in his eyes? Aren't you being too arrogant? Everyone, let's wait and see. I think he'll definitely succeed. After all, he's at the soul refinement realm. While everyone was discussing, Long Zai-Tian's face was also gloomy as he stared at Ji Tianqing, his eyes flashing with a cold light. Obviously, his target this time was the Yong and region lord. He wanted to use some means to pull the Yong and region lord under his command. However, he did not expect that Ji Tianqing would interfere and ruin his plan. How could he not be angry? Ji Tianqing ignored everyone's reaction and walked to the side of the white jade table. Under everyone's gaze, he calmly raised his hands and made a gesture. He shot out rays of white spiritual light into the mysterious treasure box. Seeing this scene, many people came to a sudden realization, and another burst of discussion broke out. Ji Tianqing is using the power of his spiritual soul. It seems that the sealing array is indeed a soul level one. Only the power of his spiritual soul can break it. Hey! Why does Ji Tianqing's method of breaking the array look so strange? I've never seen it before. Yes. Just now, when the 2 array Dao grandmasters performed the method of breaking the array, they had to coordinate with their steps. Why is Ji Tianqing standing still? Everyone was puzzled, curious, and surprised. At this moment, a white-haired old man stared at Ji Tianqing and observed him for a moment. Suddenly, his face was full of amazement, and he said excitedly, Ji Tianqing is indeed the number 1 genius of our clan. Even his technique is so novel and original. He is standing still like a towering mountain. He doesn't need any fancy method. He just uses force to break force and technique to break technique. He has surpassed the realm of array Dao Grandmaster and reached the realm of returning to simplicity and tracing back to the origin. This is a real array Dao Grandmaster. This white-haired old man was a well-known array Dao Grandmaster in the Central Plains. He had a high prestige. Previously, many people were looking forward to him breaking the array. Unfortunately, the third prince had personally asked the Yong and region lord to do it. His evaluation of Ji Tianqing suddenly enlightened everyone. They were full of admiration and kept nodding their heads in admiration. Very quickly, a quarter of an hour passed. Ji Tianqing performed the spell calmly. His hands moved smoothly like moving clouds and flowing water. Soon, the mysterious treasure box lit up with a dazzling golden light. The 18 layers of seals that sealed the treasure box were unraveled like silk being peeled out of a cocoon. They shattered and dissipated continuously. In just a short 15 minutes, all 18 layers of the seal had been broken by him, leaving not a single one behind. Swoosh! The dazzling golden light flashed and disappeared quickly. The seals on the mysterious treasure box disappeared and it returned to its original dull gray color. Ji Tianqing stopped performing the spell. He stretched out his hands and pressed on the hidden buckle of the treasure box. He pulled gently and the treasure box opened with a click. Seeing this, everyone in the hall opened their eyes wide and looked incredulous. Waves of exclamations and discussions erupted from the crowd, causing the quiet hall to immediately become clamorous. Oh my God! He really broke the seal. This is incredible. He only used a short 15 minutes to unlock the seal on the treasure box. Look at how relaxed he was when he performed the spell. It was like moving clouds and flowing water. He really broke the seal easily. I didn't expect that. Not only is Ji Tianqing the #1 martial arts genius of our clan, he is also an array grandmaster. Too monstrous. No wonder he is so arrogant. This is the capital of his arrogance. Such a talented and shocking genius is really hard to come by in 1,000 years. In the past, I always heard about Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds. I always thought it was just hearsay and exaggerated. Today, I saw his methods with my own eyes. Only then did I know how stupid my previous thoughts were. This guy is really too strong. The young elites in the hall all showed expressions of surprise, envy, and jealousy. Many people were so excited that their faces were flushed red. They worshipped Ji Tianqing and saw him as a target to learn from and imitate. Even those older, rich, and powerful people admired Ji Tianqing to the point of prostrating themselves on the ground. Only Long Zai-Tian's face was very gloomy. He frowned and no one knew what he was thinking. Ji Tianqing also ignored the cheers, exclamations and flattery of the crowd. He was using his soul to communicate with Burial of Heaven. Chapter 11-12. In fact, before Ji Tianqing broke the seal, Burial of Heaven had warned him. The reason why he could break the seal so easily and quickly was because Burial of Heaven had told him how to break it. At that time, the situation was urgent, so he didn't ask for the reason and directly broke the seal. Now that the seal had been broken and the treasure box had been opened, he obviously had to ask clearly. Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, "The seal on the treasure box is called the 18 Constellations Illusory Sun Formation. It's a formation created by Kenshin." Hearing this explanation, Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. But he felt more and more puzzled and asked, why would a formation created by Kenshin appear on this treasure box? Could it be that he set it up himself? Could it be that the things in this treasure box were put in by him? Burial of Heaven said with certainty, of course not. Kenshin taught the 18 Constellations Illusory Sun Formation to 2 of his followers. I suspect that this treasure box was sealed by one of his disciples. Kenshin's followers? Ji Tianqing's eyes suddenly lit up, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Long Zaitian just said that this treasure box was a gift from Divine General Donglin. Since that's the case, I have to find time to visit Shaohan. At this time, everyone in the hall urged Ji Tianqing to open the treasure box and see what treasure was inside. So, he hurriedly gathered his thoughts and reached out to open the lid of the treasure box. The moment the treasure box was opened, a dazzling starlight bloomed from the treasure box, illuminating the entire hall in a dazzling silver. The surging and mighty power of the stars, along with a cold and invisible force, spread out in all directions. Suddenly, the entire hall was enveloped by the silver starlight, and became cool and quiet. The guests present all trembled, their minds and spiritual senses were cleansed, and their spirits were shaken, and their emotions were calmed down. This made everyone realize that the mysterious treasure in the treasure box had the effect of cleansing the soul, and was greatly beneficial to martial artists' cultivation. Everyone revealed curious and expectant eyes, staring at the treasure box, and couldn't wait to see the treasure inside. Ji Tianqing was also full of anticipation. Looking into the treasure box, he saw 2 half-foot-tall crystal bottles in the treasure box. The transparent crystal bottles were filled with silver fine sand. Every grain of fine sand was uniform, shining with the brilliance of the stars, and contained a vast and majestic power. The fine sand in the 2 crystal bottles, who knew how many grains of fine sand there were, contained incomparably terrifying power of the stars. When Ji Tianqing saw the fine sand in the crystal bottles clearly, his eyebrows raised, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. It's actually star sand. That's great. Buried Heaven's voice rang in his head as well. He sounded rather excited as he said, "That's right, Tianqing. You've picked up a treasure today. This is the star sand from the star of the outer space. If you can obtain the other two materials, it won't be long before the divine sword is restored to the primordial spirit level, comparable to a divine artifact." Of the many guests in the hall, there were some experienced and knowledgeable powerhouses that recognized the star sand in the crystal bottles, and they all let out gasps of disbelief. Wow! It's actually the legendary star sand. No wonder it contains such a terrifying and vast power of the stars. Star sand, that is a top refining material. It's said that it can be used to refine divine artifacts. The last time someone auctioned star sand in Central State City was 100 years ago. For the last 100 years, this treasure has been priceless, and it's hard to find. The value of star sand cannot be measured with spirit stones. Even an ancient family might not have such a treasure. Heavens! Divine General Dong Lin is too extravagant. He actually took out star sand as a congratulatory gift to His Highness the Third Prince. The Third Prince said before that this congratulatory gift was sealed in the treasure box, and even Divine General Dong Lin didn't know what was inside. If Divine General Dong Lin knew that the treasure box contained star sand, his intestines would probably turn green from regret, right? Everyone look, His Highness the Third Prince's face doesn't look too good. If he knew that the congratulatory gift was star sand, he wouldn't have taken it out as a prize, right? AI. This time Ji Tianqing is really lucky. Look at his smiling face, he really picked up a treasure. The powerhouses and young elites in the hall understood the preciousness and rarity of star sand. They were all excited to the extreme, and were incomparably envious of Ji Tianqing. Long Zai Tian's face was also somewhat dark. His fists in his sleeves were secretly clenched, and he was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. Just as everyone had guessed, he also didn't know that the treasure box contained star sand. He originally thought that Divine General Dong Lin was just a casual acquaintance with him, and they didn't have any friendship at all. It was impossible for him to take out such a precious gift. Therefore, he pretended to be generous and took out this congratulatory gift as a prize to liven up the atmosphere. But he never would have thought that the treasure box contained the priceless star sand. This time, he could be considered to have lifted a rock and smashed it on his own foot. He had given away a priceless treasure for nothing. The most important thing was that the person who had obtained this priceless treasure was his life and death enemy, Ji Tianqing. This made him so angry that he almost vomited blood, as if he had eaten a fly. But in public, in front of all the guests, he still had to maintain his poise and bearing. He couldn't show any signs of regret, and he couldn't go back on his words. What was even more infuriating was that Ji Tianqing had taken advantage of him and was still acting innocent. He kept the star sand and the treasure box into his interspatial ring. He even cupped his hands towards Long Zai Tian and said with a smile, I didn't expect the Third Prince to be so generous. It's really inconceivable. This seat thanks you. This priceless treasure will be accepted by this seat. I hope the Third Prince won't go back on his words. Long Zai Tian was so angry in his heart that he couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. But under the watchful eyes of everyone, he could only endure the pain and anger in his heart. He barely squeezed out a smile and pretended to be generous. Territorial Lord Tianqing must be joking. This seat will definitely not go back on his words. You can break the seal of the treasure box, so this treasure is naturally yours. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and said, well, this is more like the demeanor of the Third Prince. After saying that, he turned around with a smile and returned to his seat. Hundreds of people in the main hall looked at him with envy, and they were still discussing and exclaiming. The Yangon Region Lord and the Horizontal Water Lord looked at Long Zai Tian with strange eyes, and then looked at Ji Tianqing. They muttered in their hearts. Today is obviously the Third Prince's birthday. He should be the focus of the audience. How could Ji Tianqing steal the limelight and become dim? Ji Tianqing, this guy's performance today is really too eye-catching. Not only did he suppress the two region lords, but he also humiliated the 2 region lords and made the 3rd prince vomit blood. Chapter 11:13. The matter of cracking the mysterious box was just a small episode before the banquet. The 3rd prince's original intention was to use the mysterious box to liven up the atmosphere and win over the Yong and region lord. However, the final result was beyond his expectations. He not only lost the priceless treasure, the star sand, but also lost the opportunity to win over the Yong and region lord. The most infuriating thing was that the star sand was obtained by Ji Tianqing. He would rather give this gift to a stranger than see it fall into the hands of Ji Tianqing. In this way, he could be considered to have suffered a double loss and suffered a huge loss. After the matter was over, he casually found an excuse and left. The rest of the people stayed in the main hall and were still discussing the previous matter. Ji Tianqing became the focus of the whole banquet. He was envied by everyone and became the core of everyone's discussion. The Yong and region lord, the horizontal water lord, the city lords and the powerhouses all clustered around Ji Tianqing. They constantly complimented and flattered him. They admired and respected him very much. Even some young talents gathered their courage and came over to pay their respects to Ji Tianqing. They wanted to be familiar with him. At least, when these people went back, they could boast to their peers that they had met Ji Tianqing and had a warm conversation with him. For them, this was not only something to brag about, but also a supreme honor. Ji Tianqing's reaction was dull. He politely declined the flattery and praise of the people and did not respond. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. It was already late, and the sun was setting in the evening. The main hall was bustling with noise for a long time. Then, a guard commander entered the main hall and loudly announced that the banquet was about to begin. Everyone quieted down and gradually calmed down. Not long after, a group of young and beautiful maids served all kinds of delicious food and wine and placed them on the long narrow tables in front of the guests. In the square outside the main hall, big red lanterns were lit and a raging bonfire was lit. There were also countless delicious food, wine, fruits and pastries placed on the long narrow tables around the square for the guests to enjoy. There were also some graceful dancers and singers playing beautiful music in the square and dancing gracefully. The atmosphere inside and outside the main hall was jubilant. Countless guests were singing and dancing, celebrating Long Zitian's birthday. Long Zitian also brought the housekeeper and the imperial bodyguard commander back to the main hall. He sat down at the head of the table and accompanied everyone to the banquet. After a period of adjustment, his state of mind and expression had returned to normal. He had a smile on his face, and his expression was as calm as usual. There was not the slightest bit of anger or depression, as if nothing had happened in the afternoon. Moreover, when he was chatting and drinking with everyone, he would intentionally or unintentionally glance at Ji Tianqing, his eyes flashing with a mocking sneer. Ji Tianqing had been drinking silently, occasionally listening to the conversations of the crowd. He inadvertently discovered Long Zitian's abnormality, and slightly frowned, thinking in his heart, Long Zitian, this guy, has a sinister and despicable appearance, don't tell me he wants to use some scheme again? He sensed that Long Zitian had bad intentions, so he secretly raised his vigilance. Unknowingly, an hour passed. The lively and noisy banquet was about to come to an end. Many guests were slightly tipsy and left the banquet, returning to their residence to rest. The Yangon region ruler followed Ji Tianqing to leave the banquet. After leaving the main hall, they were led by the imperial bodyguard captain to rest in the courtyard. Under the instructions of Long Zitian, the imperial bodyguard captain arranged for the two to stay in the plum blossom courtyard. There were a total of 3 people living in this small house. In addition to the 2 of them, there was also the horizontal water domain lord. Ji Tianqing and the Yangon region ruler walked together. After returning to the courtyard, they said goodbye to each other and returned to their rooms. When Ji Tianqing entered the room, he was shocked by the scene in the room. His residence was a set of rooms. In the middle was a spacious living room, and on both sides were a study and a bedroom. The back of the study was connected to the back garden, and the bedroom was also connected to a secret room for practice. The room was decorated very luxuriously. It looked splendid with gold and jade, and there was a light red light burning, revealing a charming atmosphere that made one's heart itch. Moreover, there were bronze incense burners in the living room and bedroom, burning with a refreshing and enchanting fragrance. That kind of invisible fragrance quietly seeped into the mind and soul, making one's heart full of restlessness and desire. Their whole body would heat up, and they couldn't wait to find a few beauties to quench their thirst. Ji Tianqing sensed that something was wrong. He frowned and looked at the situation in the bedroom. He saw that on the wide wooden bed surrounded by white gauze curtains, there was a red brocade quilt embroidered with mandarin ducks. A beautiful girl with skin as tender as jade, wearing only a red dudu, was lying in the quilt, leaning on the bed, looking at him with blurred eyes. "Young master, you're finally back. I've been waiting for you for a long time." The beautiful and delicate young girl slightly raised her body, revealing her long black hair that draped over her fair and delicate shoulders like a waterfall. She had a shy and timid posture, and her charming face was a little red as she looked at Ji Tianqing, her eyes full of admiration and desire. If it was any normal man, in this kind of restless environment, seeing such a breathtaking beauty, they would let their imagination run wild. Especially when that beautiful girl put on a posture of letting him do whatever he wanted, and let him enjoy her to his heart's content. This made people unable to restrain the prairie fire in their hearts, and they couldn't wait to pounce on her and enjoy her to their heart's content. However, Ji Tianqing resisted the restlessness in his soul, and his heart was calm. He looked at her with clear and cold eyes, and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you? Why are you in my room?" That charming girl was also stunned for a moment, and immediately revealed a trace of a young and charming smile, and explained, "Young master, I'm here to serve you. Other than this servant, the other guests in these courtyards all have their own personal attendants. They are all 1 in 1,000 beauties." The meaning of the young girl's words was obviously hinting to Ji Tianqing that he didn't need to feel embarrassed, as every guest had a beautiful woman to accompany them. However, Ji Tianqing frowned, and expressionlessly said to her, "I'm not resting, and still need to meditate and cultivate. Please leave." That charming girl obviously didn't expect him to be such an unromantic person, and immediately revealed a wronged expression. Timidly lowering her head, she said, "Young master, could it be that you think I'm a prostitute, and think I'm not clean? You've misunderstood, I'm also the young miss of an official's family, and until now, I've still been a virgin for 16 years, and I've never been touched by a strange man. Moreover, I'm just following the master's orders. If you let me leave, the master will punish me, and I'll be punished." Saying this, she lifted the red brocade quilt, and lifted a pair of white and tender, slender and long legs. She walked in front of Ji Tianqing and knelt down. She stretched out her smooth arms, and with her soft and boneless hands, hugged Ji Tianqing's legs, and bitterly begged, "Young master, how can you bear to let me be tortured and punished?" Chapter 11:14. If it were an ordinary man, like Ji Tianqing, who was young and vigorous, he might have agreed. After all, the girl looked so pitiful. She was begging in a soft voice. It was hard for him to refuse. Most importantly, although this girl was not as beautiful as Ji Ku and Yun Yao, she was still a 1 in a million beauty. Such a beautiful girl kneeling down and begging to warm the bed and serve him. Which normal man would refuse? Who wouldn't be tempted? Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was not a normal man, let alone an ordinary man. He expressionlessly looked at the pretty girl, his eyes staring into her eyes, ignoring the fact that she was only wearing a dudu. His lips curled into a cold smile. How can a lady from an ordinary official's family reach the second level of sky origin stage in her 20s? If you are really a lady from an official's family, you should have never done any household chores. Your hands should be as white as jade. However, there is a layer of calluses on your palms. Your bones are also a little deformed. Obviously, it is caused by long-term sword practice. What's more, you are using a double-edged sword. Your martial art is light and soft. Hearing his words, the pretty girl's delicate body trembled, and her face turned pale. Her gaze was somewhat evasive as she didn't dare to look directly into Ji Tianqing's sharp eyes. She slightly lowered her head and didn't know how to explain herself. She didn't know that she had tried to erase the traces of martial arts on her body. She even used a secret treasure to cover her aura. However, Ji Tianqing still managed to see through her disguise at first glance. He even managed to guess the attributes of her weapon and cultivation technique with just a little bit of information. It was terrifying. However, she had been through strict training. She was mentally strong. She came back to her senses immediately. She looked at Ji Tianqing with her clear eyes and said sincerely, "Master, in this world of martial arts, if I didn't know martial arts, how could I survive until now? No matter what, I don't have any grudges with you. I don't even know you. Why would I hurt you? This servant is only following the master's instructions to serve you, this esteemed guest, with a pure body. It is enough to make you comfortable and satisfied. After a night of entanglement, this servant will no longer have anything to do with you, and will not investigate your identity. What else are you worried about?" Ji Tianqing curled his lips and sneered calmly, "Even if I am a lecherous man who wants to spend a night with a beauty, I will never share a bed with you. I'm a man with a family. Moreover, my wife is a world-famous, devastatingly beautiful heaven's proud daughter, as pure and holy as a fairy from the ninth heaven. Do you think that I'm used to seeing fairies in the heavens? Do you think that I'll be interested in the vulgar women of the mortal world? Go back and tell Long Zai Tian that the beauty trap is useless against me. If he really wants to deal with me, ask him to use his brain more." With that, he urged the pretty girl to put on her clothes and leave. The young girl was on the verge of tears. With a face full of grievance, she said, "Young master, this servant knows that you are a person like the stars in the sky. With this servant's looks, it is impossible for this servant to be associated with you. But when this servant was sent into the room, I only had this dudu covering my body. Could it be that young master wants this servant to leave like this? If others see this servant in such an embarrassing state, this servant might as well die." Ji Tianqing was speechless. In his heart, he thought, Long Zai Tian, this dog, is really despicable and shameless. "Alright, if you don't want to leave, then I'll leave." He left without looking back and walked out of the room. The pretty girl cried out and immediately stretched out her soft arms, tightly hugging his thighs. Her whole body hung on his body. "Young master. This servant begs you, please be merciful and pamper this servant." Ji Tianqing turned around indifferently. He stretched out his hand and pointed at her neck, sealing her acupuncture point and all her strength. The young girl was unable to move. Her body stood stiffly in the room, and she couldn't even open her mouth to speak. Ji Tianqing waved his hand again and picked up the red brocade blanket from the bed. He wrapped the young girl tightly and threw her onto the bed. "Stay here obediently. When the sun rises, your acupuncture point will naturally be unsealed. At that time, you can leave on your own." After saying that, he left the room without looking back. His figure disappeared into the night. The young girl was wrapped up like a dumpling by the red blanket. She lay on the bed, unable to move. She could only watch as Ji Tianqing left. She stared at his back with her eyes wide open. She let out a whimper. After a while, when Ji Tianqing was far away and the sound of his footsteps disappeared, she finally calmed down. She furrowed her willowy eyebrows. Her originally clear and kind eyes flashed with a gloomy cold light. After Ji Tianqing left the plum blossom courtyard, he secretly used a secret technique to hide his tracks and aura. Then, he headed towards the third courtyard. He had been thinking about the mysterious secret room in the third courtyard's hidden dragon palace. Previously, he had used his soul to investigate. The celestial puppet had entered the secret room and taken out the mysterious treasure box containing the star sand. Through the expressions of Long Zaitian and the celestial puppet, he could determine that the secret room was very important. It was very likely that it contained Long Zitian's treasures and secrets. There might even be some clues that could be used against him. Tonight was an excellent opportunity. He came to the Flying Dragon Palace openly. Long Zitian was still in the main hall of the front courtyard, drinking and chatting with the guests. Tomorrow, he would leave the Flying Dragon Palace. If he didn't take advantage of tonight to sneak into the secret room and investigate, how could he be satisfied? After 100 breaths of time, he quietly went around a dozen sentry posts and avoided dozens of guards. He was outside the Hidden Dragon Palace. Under the curtain of night, the Hidden Dragon Palace was quiet and the lights were dim. Other than a dozen red lanterns hanging at the entrance of the main hall and under the eaves of the corridors, there was not a trace of light in the palace. Ji Tianqing observed his surroundings for a while. After confirming that it was safe, he secretly used the earth escape technique and sneaked into the Hidden Dragon Palace from underground. Of course, there was also a spirit grade array blocking him underground. He spent a bit of effort and wasted an hour before he broke open a crack in the array. Then, he passed through the crack in the array and came out of the ground. He appeared in the dark and lightless main hall. Whoosh! Like a ghost, he silently came out of the ground. But just as he steadied himself, before he could see the scene in the main hall, a low shout came from behind him. Who is it? How dare you intrude into the Hidden Dragon Palace? You're courting death. As the murderous roar resounded, a dark red saber light chopped down at lightning speed. He didn't have time to turn around. He threw out a giant golden palm and slapped it at the blade light. Bang! With a muffled sound, the blood-red blade light was smashed into pieces. The giant golden palm struck a figure, sending that person flying backward and crashing into the wall. Chapter 11:15. Ji Tianqing naturally knew that the real Tuoba Rui had died long ago. The demon youth in front of him that looked like Tuoba Rui was actually a celestial puppet transformed from the heaven-swallowing beast. After a year, the celestial puppet's strength was even greater than before. It had reached the second level of the soul refinement realm. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at the celestial puppet sharply, observing its changes. At this time, the celestial puppet crawled up from the ground. Dark red blood light surged from its body as it waved its palms and attacked again. He unleashed all of his power and condensed a dozen blood-red sharp blades, stabbing towards Ji Tianqing from all directions. Ji Tianqing did not want to be entangled with it too much to avoid causing too much commotion and alerting the guards outside the Hidden Dragon Palace. In order to end the battle quickly, he did not hesitate to use his divine spirit sword and attacked the celestial puppet with all his strength. Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 divine soul golden swords, each more than 3 feet long, shot out, one from the left and one from the right. In an instant, they destroyed several bloody blades and struck the celestial capital puppet. Bam bam! 2 muffled sounds rang out at almost the same time, echoing in the palace. The celestial puppet's chest and throat were pierced by the divine spirit golden swords. It flew back a dozen steps and crashed into the wall again. There were 2 fist-sized wounds that went through the front and back. Dark red blood constantly gushed out. The celestial puppet crashed into the wall and fell to the ground. After rolling a few times, it stopped and could no longer move. Its physical body had been destroyed and it died on the spot. However, its divine spirit flew out of the corpse and burrowed into the ground with a swoosh, disappearing. Ji Tianqing hurriedly withdrew the 2 divine spirit golden swords and used his divine spirit power to track down the celestial puppet's divine spirit. He found that the celestial puppet's divine spirit did not escape outside the palace. Instead, it burrowed deep into the ground and escaped into the secret room. This damned monster is really loyal. Its physical body was destroyed, but its divine spirit still wants to protect that secret room. This made him even more certain that the secret room hid a huge secret. Otherwise, the celestial puppet would not protect it so desperately. Unfortunately, the secret chamber was hidden deep underground and was protected by a powerful formation. The celestial puppet was very familiar with the formation of the secret chamber. It could pass through the protective formation and burrow into the secret chamber from underground. Yet, he could only walk to the corner of the hall and unleash boundless magic power from his palm, activating the mechanism array on the wall. Previously, when the celestial capital puppet had opened the door to the secret chamber, he had secretly memorized the method to open it. Sure enough, when he finished casting the spell, the wall made a muffled sound, and a stone door immediately opened. Shwa! Without hesitation, he stepped through the stone door and entered a dimly lit passageway. The passage made of rocks twisted and turned downwards, all the way to the depths of the earth. He flew in the tunnel for 10 breaths of time and arrived several hundred meters underground. He entered a secret room. This secret chamber had a radius of over 1,000 meters. It was huge and spacious, and there were rows of stone lamps on the walls, emitting a dim yellow light. The scene in the secret chamber was out of Ji Tianqing's expectations. He frowned on the spot, revealing a look of vigilance and wariness. He saw that on the walls of the secret chamber, there were many hidden compartments, used to store all kinds of treasures and resources. On the wide floor of the secret chamber, on the dark stone floor, there were countless complex patterns, outlining a huge formation pattern. And in the middle of the secret chamber, there was a 100-meter tall, 5-colored altar. The altar was like a pyramid, its appearance was simple and crude, and the runes and patterns carved on it were very exquisite and mysterious. Its entire body emitted a colorful brilliance, and it rippled with boundless and mighty power. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to this altar. This was Long Zai Tian's strongest trump card, the venomous insect Dao artifact, the origin of all venomous insects. The origin of all venomous insects is Long Zai Tian's strongest trump card. He has always carried it with him. How could he have placed it in this secret chamber? Ji Tianqing frowned, his heart full of doubts. He vaguely had a bad premonition, and he was secretly on guard. At this moment, the formation patterns on the floor of the secret chamber suddenly lit up with a dazzling 5-colored brilliance. Swoosh! The 5-colored brilliance appeared out of thin air, condensing into a light shield of 1,000 meters, like an inverted bowl, enveloping the entire secret chamber. The area of 1,000 meters was sealed and imprisoned. Ji Tianqing was inside the 5-colored light shield. He only felt that it was difficult to breathe and move. There was an invisible force coming from all directions, suppressing him like a mountain, making him feel as if he was trapped in a quagmire. At the same time, at the top of the 5-colored altar, 2 figures suddenly appeared. The leader was wearing a golden dragon robe and a golden dragon crown. He was tall and burly, exuding a confident and arrogant domineering aura. He was the third prince, Long Zai Tian. The figure behind him was a demon clan youth, and it was the heavenly puppet that had escaped into the secret chamber just now. Long Zai Tian looked down at Ji Tianqing from above, and sneered complacently, "Ji Tianqing, you are truly audacious, coming to Flying Dragon City alone, and even daring to barge into my secret chamber at night. I did not guess wrongly. I had long expected that you would barge in here, so I prepared a big surprise for you in advance, ha 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 ha." Ji Tianqing raised his head to look at the top of the altar, and after seeing Long Zai Tian and the heavenly puppet, his expression immediately changed, and his eyes became extremely solemn. Damn it! This was actually Long Zai Tian's scheme. This dog, he had long expected that I would barge into the secret chamber, and actually set up an ambush here in advance. Seeing that the heavenly puppet was intact, he immediately understood that the puppet's body that he had destroyed in the main hall was just a substitute. Long Zai Tian had long planned and arranged it. He stared coldly at Long Zai Tian, and shouted in a deep voice, "Long Zai Tian, you are truly sinister and despicable." Long Zai Tian grinned, and said with a sneer, "Hee hee, this is my wisdom, to be able to predict the enemy's actions, and only then can I make you walk right into my trap. This time, you clearly came to Flying Dragon City with ill intentions, and repeatedly embarrassed me. How can I let you off so easily? Ji Tianqing, tonight is the day of your death, and our grudges will be settled immediately. Stop resisting stubbornly, kneel down and surrender." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, and said with a disdainful sneer, Long Zai Tian, you are too confident and arrogant. With just you and a heavenly puppet, you dare to say that you can kill me? Long Zai Tian nodded his head slightly, and said with a sneer, he. With the strength of this heavenly puppet and I, we really don't have the confidence to kill you. But what about with the help of these two experts? As soon as he finished speaking, two middle-aged men appeared beside him. These two people stood on his left and right, and looked at Ji Tianqing with a sneer on their faces. Ji Tianqing instantly recognized them. They were the 100 Basin Lord and the Shangchuan Domain Lord. He immediately frowned, and a cold killing intent flashed across his eyes. But this was not the end, Long Zai Tian continued. Other than the four of us, I have also set up the 5 absolute sky array. With this spirit level array, combined with my 10,000 gu altar, it is enough to kill 7th or 8th level spirit refinement realm experts. Chapter 11:16. Without a doubt, Long Zai Tian was determined to kill Ji Tianqing tonight. He understood Ji Tianqing's nature very well. After careful planning, he finally set up this death trap. He was a young genius in the spirit refinement realm. Adding on the ferocious and powerful puppet, it was enough to give Ji Tianqing a headache. He did not expect that he would pull the Shangchuan Domain Lord and the 100 Stream Domain Lord into his ship to deal with Ji Tianqing. More importantly, the 5 ultimate sky formation that sealed the entire secret room was a spirit-level high-grade array. This array combined with the 1,000 gu altar had terrifying power, enough to kill a 7th or 8th level spirit refinement realm expert. No matter how one looked at it, Ji Tianqing had no chance of surviving or escaping. He was dead for sure. Ji Tianqing's face was gloomy and his eyes were cold as ice. He stared at Long Zai Tian and said in a deep voice, Long Zai Tian, your sinister and despicable nature has indeed exceeded my expectations. However, you mustered such a large force and pulled in 2 domain lords to deal with me. Have you ever thought that if your plan failed and this matter was leaked out, you would be completely finished? Long Zai Tian nodded slightly and sneered, that's right, I did take a huge risk. If I did not succeed, my reputation would be ruined. However, you are too difficult to deal with. You are the strongest enemy in my life. In order to get rid of you as soon as possible, I can disregard everything and bet everything on it. The facts have proven that I succeeded. The trap I set up is a death trap. No matter what, you will die, for sure. I really can't think of any chance of you surviving. As long as you die, I can rest easy and the news will not be leaked out. I am still the honorable 3rd prince. Not long after, I will defeat Long Yunshao and seize the throne of the Son of Heaven. In the end, I will become the emperor of the human race. After thousands of years, the world will only remember my great achievements. Who will remember a loser like you? History and justice have always been written by the winner. The loser has no right to speak. Ha 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 ha. Long Zai Tian's attitude was as if victory was in his grasp. He was arrogant to the extreme. The 2 area leaders also revealed cold smiles. Their eyes were full of anticipation, and they were in high spirits. They are Long Zai Tian's loyal dogs. Tonight, they will eradicate Ji Tianqing. Not only will they be able to vent their anger, they will also be able to make the greatest contribution. In the future, when Long Zaitian succeeds the position of Son of Heaven and Monarch, they will be the greatest contributors and will definitely be put in an important position. Thinking of this, the 2 of them were filled with excitement and longing, their blood boiling. Ji Tianqing silently accumulated his strength, and his entire body surged with sword intent that soared into the sky as he secretly resisted the suppressive force of the 5 extreme Skyforce formation. Very good. Long Zai Tian, it seems like you want to stake everything on this one throw, then I can only fight with my back to the river, and thoroughly end this grudge with you. As he spoke, a black light flashed in his right palm, and a black broken sword appeared. Long Zai Tian retracted his cold smile. His entire body emitted a cold killing intent as he ordered in a deep voice, attack together, We must kill him as fast as possible." Following his order, the celestial puppet flew up from the altar and pounced towards Ji Tianqing from above. The 100 Flow Territory Lord and the Shangchuan Territory Lord also took out their treasured swords, and used their peerless sword techniques to attack Ji Tianqing. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In a split second, dozens of cold sword lights and bloody blades slashed down from the sky, enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. Ji Tianqing did not panic in the face of danger. Golden light flickered on his back, and a pair of golden wings condensed. He raised his magma-like left arm and slammed his palm towards the celestial puppet, while his right hand slashed out a sword light that could split heaven and earth, and attacked the two territory lords. Burning Sky Palm. Metal Emperor Slash. The huge flaming palm that blotted out the sky instantly shattered the bloody blades released by the celestial puppet, and hit him with a bang. With a bang, the celestial puppet was sent flying by the burning sky palm, and crashed heavily onto the 10,000 gu altar. Although his body was formed by the heaven-swallowing beast, and his defense and strength were very strong, he was still unable to withstand the burning sky palm. However, he was still unable to withstand the might of the burning heaven palm. Cracks actually appeared all over his body from the impact, and his flesh and blood were all burnt into charcoal. The golden sword light from the broken sword was hundreds of meters long, and it exploded with an unstoppable force. Kaboom! The huge sword instantly broke through dozens of sword lights, and hit the Shangchuan Territory Lord with a dull cracking sound. The Shangchuan Territory Lord, who was at the 3rd level of the soul cultivation realm, could not withstand Ji Tianqing's attack. His protective Dharma power and armor were shattered on the spot, and he was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth, and fell below the altar. Then, the 100 Flow Territory Lord wielded his treasured sword and slashed at Ji Tianqing. But when the sword light came down on him, he did not hesitate to close his wings and protect himself. Boom! A deafening explosion burst out, and the sky was filled with golden light and white divine soul light, bursting out in all directions in the secret chamber. Ji Tianqing stood where he was and was only pushed back 10 steps. He was not injured at all. However, the 100 Flow Territory Lord was pushed back 100 steps before he could regain his balance. He was shocked and could not believe it. He roared and pounced at Ji Tianqing again, holding the sword with both hands. Earth-shattering slash. The 100 Flow Territory Lord unleashed all his power and used his most powerful attack, slashing out a 100-meter-long giant sword. The power of the giant sword was enough to split 100 miles and turn the earth into a deep abyss. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly. His eyes flickered as he used the 9 heaven-burying swords without hesitation. Sword draw form. He immediately drew out the sword and poured his powerful divine soul energy into the broken sword, and slashed at the 100 Flow Territory Lord with all his might. An earth-shattering sword light slashed out and met the 100-meter-long giant sword. Bang! In an instant, the 100-meter-long giant sword was broken and shattered into pieces. The 100 Flow Territory Lord could not dodge in time and was cut in half by the sword light. His body split apart from the middle, turning into 2 halves. Dark red blood mixed together as they fell from the sky. A dignified domain lord, a powerhouse at the 3rd level of the soul refinement realm, was actually killed by Ji Tianqing in a single strike. Even his divine soul was split into 2 by the sword. It shattered on the spot and was completely obliterated. After all, Ji Tianqing's earth-shattering sword contained terrifying divine soul energy. Both the celestial capital puppet and the Shangchuan territorial lord were dumbfounded at the sight of this. Their eyes widened in horror. They could not believe that Ji Tianqing's strength had actually reached such an extent. This was insane. While the two of them were in a daze, Ji Tianqing swung his sword again and stabbed at the heavenly capital puppet. Sword thrust form. A cold star lit up the sky. As the broken sword stabbed, an extremely condensed cold light appeared and disappeared into thin air. It crossed a few hundred meters and pierced the heavenly capital puppet's chest. Although the cold light was only the size of a fist. However, when it struck the celestial puppet, it suddenly erupted with a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Boom! Chapter 11:17. The celestial puppet's body was transformed from a gigantic heaven-devouring beast. It was transformed from its original body, and its defense and strength were extremely strong. No one expected that it would be destroyed by Ji Tianqing's sword and turned into a bloody pulp. Not only that, but the power of the explosion created a huge crater in the secret chamber's ground. The entire secret chamber shook violently, and more than 10 trenches that were more than 10 miles long appeared in the ground. The earth-shattering commotion caused the entire hidden dragon palace and even the entire flying dragon palace to tremble. It was simply too terrifying. The Shangchuan territorial lord and Long Zhaitian were both stunned, and their eyes were filled with fear. However, Long Zhaitian did not participate in the battle from the beginning as he was busy controlling the 10,000 gu altar. His plan was to let the celestial puppet and the 2 territorial lords stall Ji Tianqing, and it would be best if they could injure Ji Tianqing. Then, he would control the 10,000 gu altar's power and kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. This was originally a foolproof plan that would go smoothly. However, no matter how much Long Zhaitian calculated, he did not expect Ji Tianqing's true strength to reach such a terrifying level. The celestial puppet and the 2 territorial lords were instantly killed after exchanging a few blows with him. Seeing this scene, Long Zhaitian was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His heart was filled with anxiety and anger. However, he could not give up halfway. He desperately used his dermic powers to control the 10,000 gu altar and accumulate terrifying power. Whoosh! At this moment, after Ji Tianqing killed the celestial puppet, he did not hesitate to kill the Shangchuan territorial lord. Die! He roared with murderous intent and slashed out a 100-meter-long divine soul sword light with his broken sword. The dazzling white sword instantly struck the Shangchuan territorial lord. The pitiful Shangchuan territorial lord had not recovered from his shock and wanted to dodge, but it was already too late. Bam! Another loud, muffled sound rang out. The enormous divine soul sword light split the Shangchuan territorial lord in half. Even his divine soul could not escape and was directly cut into pieces by the giant sword. The Shangchuan territorial lord followed in the footsteps of the 100 domain lords and was killed on the spot. The raging energy and dazzling sword light filled the secret chamber within a radius of 1,000 meters, causing chaos in the secret chamber. In the blink of an eye, only Ji Tianqing and Long Zhaitian were left in the secret chamber. Of course, the heavenly capital puppet's fleshly body was destroyed, but its divine soul still survived. When it saw Ji Tianqing carrying the broken sword and rushing towards Long Zhaitian at lightning speed, it was immediately filled with anxiety. No! I can't let you destroy my lord's plan. The celestial puppet's divine soul let out a roar. Its 2 soul dharma eyes charged towards Ji Tianqing fearlessly, carrying the power of its soul dharma eyes. His 2 dharma eyes unleashed thousands of divine soul white light beams, intending to fight Ji Tianqing to the death. Swish! Swish! Thousands of white light blades fell from the sky like a rain of arrows, enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. In order to stop Ji Tianqing, the celestial puppet no longer cared about the consequences. This supreme technique had exhausted all of its spiritual energy. Therefore, the power of this ultimate technique was also unimaginably strong. No matter how strong Ji Tianqing was, he didn't dare to ignore the bombardment of divine soul light blades. Wings of the golden rock. He suddenly let out a low growl and closed the golden wings on his shoulders to protect himself. In the next moment, an overwhelming amount of white light blades came crashing down, hitting the golden wings one after another. Bang 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 bang. Amidst a series of muffled sounds, the pair of golden wings trembled from the impact of the white blades. Ji Tianqing couldn't stop himself from retreating. He was forced back several hundred steps, all the way to the edge of the secret chamber. Only when his back was against the edge of the 5 extremes array did he stop. Although the golden wings blocked the attack of thousands of divine soul light blades, leaving him unscathed. But the power of the golden wings was almost exhausted, and the light became much dimmer. After the divine light blades dissipated, Ji Tianqing spread out his golden wings and looked up at the two divine soul eyes in the air. "Evil creature, your time of death has come." He let out a low growl and waved the broken sword in his right hand, slashing out two divine soul sword lights with all his strength. Bang bang! Two blazing white giant swords 10 feet long slashed the two divine soul eyes, causing two loud muffled sounds. The celestial puppet's two divine soul eyes were shattered on the spot, turning into white light fragments that scattered in all directions. In the moment before its death, a final thought flashed through its divine soul. "Lord, I've done my best. You must succeed." As dozens of white light fragments fell from the sky, the celestial puppet was completely destroyed. The two territorial lords and the celestial puppet were dead, and now only Ji Tianqing and Long Zitian were left. Ji Tianqing's body was filled with killing intent, and he turned to look at the top of the altar, looking for traces of Long Zitian. However, at this moment, an angry and resentful roar came from the 10,000 Gu altar. 10,000 Gu holy technique, devour the heavens and earth. As Long Zitian roared, the power of the 10,000 Gu altar and the 5 ultimate sky formation suddenly burst out to the extreme. The 100-meter-tall 5-colored altar lit up with a 5-colored rainbow light that enveloped heaven and earth, releasing an incomparably terrifying power that enveloped Ji Tianqing. His expression changed, and he immediately retreated. Swoosh! But the 5-colored rainbow light that blotted out the sky was unimaginably fast, and it instantly enveloped him. He was drowned in the 5-colored rainbow light, and his whole body was wrapped in a mysterious and vast power. His body stiffened on the spot, and he was completely unable to move. Withdraw! Long Zitian's angry roar came from the altar again. Immediately, the 10,000 Gu altar released an incomparably terrifying devouring power that enveloped Ji Tianqing and flew him into the altar. The 5-colored rainbow light that filled the entire secret room condensed into a huge ball of light that enveloped him like a cocoon. He had a bad premonition, and he desperately erupted with strength to struggle. However, the cocoon formed by the 5-colored rainbow light was extremely tough. Even if he swung his broken sword and cut open a crack in the cocoon would immediately heal and suppress him even more violently. Finally, he was enveloped by the 5-colored rainbow light and flew into the 10,000 Gu altar. Swoosh! The 10,000 Gu altar swallowed him, and he was suppressed inside the altar, in a mysterious space filled with 5-colored rainbow light. This was the inner space of the 10,000 Gu altar, and it was isolated from the outside world. Unless Ji Tianqing could break the 10,000 Gu altar, there was no way he could escape. The 5-colored rainbow light enveloped him, and no matter how he struggled, he could not break free. There was no way he could escape from the 10,000 Gu altar, only death awaited him. Moreover, the 5-colored rainbow light was a powerful Gu Dao divine power, and it was constantly corroding his body, devouring his magic power and soul power. Inside the 5-colored light ball, his strength was rapidly being devoured, and his struggle became weaker and weaker. Soon, he was completely suppressed by the 10,000 Gu altar. At this time, Long Zitian's figure appeared, and he stood at the top of the altar with a pale face, panting heavily. Chapter 11:18. Long Zitian adjusted his breathing for a while before gradually calming down. He stood at the top of the altar and looked down at the myriad Gu altar. His divine soul could see the 5-colored space inside the altar. Seeing Ji Tianqing trapped in the 5-colored space and suppressed by the altar, becoming extremely weak, he immediately raised his head and laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha. Ji Tianqing, you little bastard, to think that you would have such a day? What number 1 genius, what once-in-a-lifetime monstrous genius, you are nothing in front of me. Aren't you arrogant? You colluded with Long Yunshao to go against me. What qualifications do you have to be my enemy now? I spent so much effort to plan this sure-kill situation, it is to completely eliminate you. Since you cannot be used by me, I will make you disappear forever. Long Zitian was in a very good mood. He laughed proudly, his eyes surging with an ominous light. With the help of the 5 extremes formation and the myriad gu origin, he successfully suppressed Ji Tianqing. His scheme and goal were finally achieved. As for the deaths of the 2 domain lords and the capital of Heaven Puppet, he did not care at all. As long as he could achieve his goal of completely eliminating Ji Tianqing, he would not hesitate to pay any price. Within the 5-colored space of the myriad gu altar, Ji Tianqing heard Long Zitian's wild laughter. But he remained silent, silently resisting the corrosion of the gu path divine power, thinking of a way to escape. Long Zitian's laughter gradually stopped. He said proudly, Ji Tianqing, I will tell you the truth, none of the experts suppressed in the myriad gu altar can escape alive. In these 10 years, the number of heaven origin and soul refinement experts suppressed by me using the myriad gu altar exceeded 100. Among them, there were more than a dozen soul refinement experts. They are all the same as you, going against me, swearing to die and refusing to be loyal to me. Thus, they were all refined by me using the myriad gu altar, turning into a pool of blood. Their life's cultivation was devoured by the myriad gu altar. Because of this, my enemies are constantly decreasing, they are either dead or surrendered. The power of the myriad gu altar is also constantly increasing, no one can stop it. Humph, no matter how strong you are, you will be reduced to nothing in 6 hours and become the nourishment of the myriad gu altar. Speaking of this, he grinned sinisterly and said in a mocking tone, You are the number 1 genius of the human race, your cultivation is profound and your talent is superb. After being devoured by the myriad gu altar, the power of my altar will definitely increase exponentially, its power will become even stronger. This is your destiny, and this is also the result of making an enemy out of me. Tonight, you can die in peace. It won't be long before I kill Long Yunshao and bury him with you. Ha ha ha. After saying that, Long Zitian let out a few wild laughs, leaped off the altar, and flew towards the door of the secret room. 6 hours later, Ji Tianqing would definitely turn into a pool of blood, not even his bones would be left. There was no doubt about it. Long Zitian could not wait in the secret room for 6 hours, by then, the sky would be bright. He still had to return to the Flying Dragon Palace and appease the guests. After all, the commotion caused by the battle earlier was too great, it had already alarmed the entire Flying Dragon Palace. The hundreds and thousands of guests must have been startled awake. They might even make wild guesses and spread some rumors. Long Zitian had to personally resolve this matter, to prevent the guests from causing a commotion, or spreading false rumors. He had great ambitions, he wanted to fight for the throne of the emperor in the future, and succeed the throne of the emperor. He cared about his reputation and achievements the most, he would not allow others to criticize him and affect him negatively. Swoosh! He flew out of the secret room as fast as lightning, and soon returned to the main hall of the Hidden Dragon Palace. The main hall was as dark as ink, it was silent. However, it was noisy outside the Hidden Dragon Palace, there were constant noises and the shouts of the guards. Long Zitian quickly rushed to the main hall and opened the door. The moment he opened the door, he saw over 100 armored guards with swords gathered outside the Hidden Dragon Palace's main door. Many guards surrounded the main hall's main door. The 3 guard commanders were gathered together to discuss something, their expressions were very serious. In the surrounding courtyards, there were hundreds of guests gathered, they were all gathered in groups of 3 to 5, whispering to each other about something. Obviously, things were just as Long Zitian expected. The commotion from the battle earlier had awakened the guests in the palace. Countless guests got up in the middle of the night, they were all discussing this matter, and rushed to the Hidden Dragon Palace to see what was going on. None of these guests were mediocre, they were all powerful martial artists, most of them were Sky Origin realm experts. Everyone could sense that the earth-shaking commotion came from beneath the Hidden Dragon Palace. Luckily, the Flying Dragon Palace's guards had rushed over immediately. They surrounded the main door of the Hidden Dragon Palace, blocking the guests outside. Otherwise, the guests who came to watch the show might very well charge into the Hidden Dragon Palace. Long Zitian saw that the situation outside the palace was a little chaotic, but it was not out of control yet. He immediately let out a breath of relief. He quickly walked out of the main hall, stood under the eaves of the main door, and appeared in front of the crowd. When the guards and guests saw him appear, they all knelt down to greet him. Greetings to the third prince. Long Zetian calmly scanned the crowd. He said in a dignified and calm voice, "Everyone, please rise. It is so late at night, why are you all not resting in your rooms, but gathered here and making such a ruckus?" He asked even though he already knew the answer. His dignified eyes scanned the crowd. The guests and the 3 bodyguard commanders hurriedly tried to explain. "Third prince, we all heard a loud noise coming from under the ground. What happened? Your Highness, are you all right? Did something happen?" Long Zetian waved his sleeves and explained with a light smile, "I see, no wonder everyone rushed here and is talking about it. Just now, when I was cultivating in the secret underground room, I had a feeling and comprehended a powerful secret skill, so I couldn't help but test its power. I never thought that the secret skill's power would be so strong that it would cause such a huge commotion and disturb everyone's rest. I am deeply sorry." Hearing Long Zetian's explanation, the crowd finally understood. They all nodded their heads in praise and flattery. Third Prince is indeed a martial arts genius, to be able to comprehend martial arts and master a secret skill at his birthday banquet. Third Prince's strength is indeed extraordinary, to be able to cause such a commotion. That secret skill must be profound and unfathomable. Tonight's matter was actually a mistake, but the Third Prince's secret skill has reached great success. If this matter spreads out, it will be an interesting story. The guests discussed for a while, their laughter never ending. Long Zetian humbly said a few words, then sent the crowd away. Chapter 11:19. Hidden Dragon Palace became quiet. All the guests had left, only the guards were left. The secret room deep underground also fell into darkness and silence. The 10,000 gu altar was still emitting 5-colored light, but it was not dazzling. It was much more low profile, as if it was sleeping. This was because Ji Tianqing, who was suppressed inside the altar, had temporarily stopped resisting. When he was suppressed by the 10,000 gu altar, he was filled with anger and anxiety. He wanted to tear Long Zetian into pieces. He only wanted to escape the altar. But now, he calmed down. He was no longer anxious and panicked. He calmly thought of a solution. The mysterious 5-colored light was condensed from the power of the 10,000 gu origin. It had the power to corrode his body and soul. Just as Long Zetian said, he was suppressed by the 10,000 gu altar. In 6 hours, his body and soul would be devoured. He would turn into nothingness. He would become boundless energy, increasing the 10,000 gu altar's power. However, after he calmed down, he immediately thought of a way to resist the 10,000 gu altar. He entered the sword world and hid in the peaceful soil city. In the 5-colored space, only a broken sword was left floating in the air, corroded by the endless 5-colored light. The broken sword was a top-grade soul artifact. Its material and defense were comparable to a divine artifact. Even though the 10,000 gu altar was a gu path divine artifact, it could not corrode the broken sword in a short time, let alone injure Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing estimated that the broken sword could last for at least 3 days without being damaged. In these 3 days, he would be safe. It was just that Burial of Heaven expended a lot of energy. He stayed in peaceful soil city. As he consumed pills to heal his wounds, he communicated with Buried Heaven through voice transmission to discuss countermeasures. Burial of Heaven, although I hid in the sword world, I will not be in danger for at least 3 days. But this cannot go on. We cannot sit here and wait for death. We need to think of a way to escape the altar. Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, "Of course." Long Zetian is busy taking charge of the situation in front of Heaven's eye, to prevent the news from leaking and arousing suspicion among the guests. But after 6 hours, he will definitely return to check if you have been killed by the 10,000 gu altar. Thus, you only have 6 hours. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment. He probed, "How about I ask the Golden Mountain King to gather the warriors of the Earth Spirit race? We can work together and use the formation to inject energy into you. Then, you'll break through the altar suppression and seal, and take us out of here? Of Heaven's Path divine artifact, we can't break through the altar's suppression, we are inside the altar. We can't break through the altar's divine goo path divine artifact, we can't break through the altar. Divine artifact divine artifact divine divine artifact path divine divine thousand goo divine 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 artifact divine artifact divine 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 artifact. If we divine thousand goo altar, even if we can neutralize the goo path divine power, we won't be able to destroy the sacrificial altar. Are we going to be trapped here forever? Burial of Heaven thought for a moment, then said in a low and vigorous voice, if you want to escape, you have to use some special methods. You can't just think about destroying the altar. In a head-on collision, the material of the broken sword was slightly inferior to the altar, so it would be difficult to destroy it with brute force. Maybe you can do the opposite and try to control the myriad goo altar. Ji Tianqing frowned. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What? Control the myriad goo altar? The burial of Heaven? Aren't you being too whimsical? The myriad goo altar is Long Zai Tian's strongest trump card, a natal divine artifact cultivated by his soul. How can I control it? How do you know if you don't try? Burial of Heaven said solemnly in a deep voice, you are the #1 genius of the Central Prefecture. You have so many trump cards, and you have my help. In front of us, nothing is impossible. You've already created so many miracles, can't you even handle a broken altar? Ji Tianqing nodded repeatedly and said with a light smile, all right. Thank you for your praise. Since you have so much confidence in me, then I'll give it my all. Anyway, we're trapped here, and there's no hope of escaping. I'll burn my boats and fight with my back to the river. After saying that, he flew out of the sword world and returned to the five-colored space. Swoosh! The moment he appeared, endless multicolored light surged over and wrapped around him, turning him into a multicolored cocoon. The mysterious and bizarre Gu Dao divine power crazily corroded his body and soul, devouring his flesh and soul. However, he calmly stretched out his right palm and activated the heaven-mending orb in his mind, releasing a dense and mysterious white light. Heaven-mending orb, ever since I got you, I still can't figure out what kind of treasure you are. But you allowed me to create countless miracles, devouring and purifying all kinds of power. This time, I hope you can still create miracles and don't disappoint me. He murmured in his heart as he stared at the center of his right palm. He stared at the mysterious white light and observed the changes in the light. Soon, he clearly saw that the mysterious white light spread out. Once it came into contact with the five-colored light, the five-colored light immediately disappeared. The five-colored light surged from all directions and condensed into five-colored water streams. They flowed into his palm along the mysterious white light, and then flowed into the heaven-mending orb in his mind. Seeing this scene, his spirit was immediately shaken, and his eyes shone with a strong light of surprise. This is great. The heaven-mending orb really didn't disappoint me, it can actually devour Gu Dao divine power. The miraculous heaven-mending orb is indeed an omnipotent divine item. His heart was filled with joy and excitement, and he was also full of hope and expectation towards the burial of Heaven's suggestion. Since the heaven-mending orb could devour Gu Dao divine power, then he had a high chance of turning the tables and seizing control of the 10,000 Gu altar for himself. The 10,000 Gu altar was Long Zai Tian's greatest trump card, and also his secret weapon to control the two aristocratic families, as well as many forces and experts. Once Ji Tianqing seized the 10,000 Gu altar, it was equivalent to severing Long Zai Tian's lifeblood, and taking his life. At that time, Long Zai Tian would lose everything, and suffer a crushing defeat. Ji Tianqing felt excited just thinking about it, and his heart surged. But this was only his fantasy. The most important thing now was to use the heaven-mending orb to remove the Gu Dao divine power as soon as possible. He calmed his emotions and activated the heaven-mending orb with all his strength. His palms released dense white light, and crazily devoured the five-colored light. As time passed, the endless rainbow light was devoured by the heaven-mending orb. The Gu Dao divine power in the five-colored space became thinner and thinner, and its power was also weakening. In just a short hour, the five-colored light in the entire space was reduced by half. 2 hours passed, and the rainbow light in the five-colored space was completely devoured, disappearing without a trace. Then, something even stranger happened. The Gu Dao divine power that was devoured by the heaven-mending orb was actually purified by the heaven-mending orb. The evil power within was removed, and it became even purer. Chapter 11:20. Ji Tianqing tried a few times, manipulating the Gu Dao divine power and the heaven-mending pearl. He could indeed release a five-colored brilliance. However, he had yet to figure out the use of the purified Gu Dao divine power that he could control. He ignored the Gu Dao divine power for now. He opened his pure heart Dharma eye and used his divine soul power to investigate the internal structure of the myriad Gu altar. If he wanted to seize control of the myriad Gu altar, he had to first figure out the structure of the altar, then find the formation nodes. Most importantly, Long Zai Tian had fused with the myriad Gu altar, leaving behind a deep divine soul imprint. He had to get rid of those divine soul imprints to seize control. Time passed by quietly. Unknowingly, another hour had passed. Ji Tianqing used his divine soul power to figure out a portion of the myriad Gu altar's internal structure. Unfortunately, this was only a small portion, far less than 1/10 of the entire altar. This myriad Gu altar was a Gu Dao divine artifact from the olden antiquity era. It was very mysterious and had an extremely complex structure. Even if he studied it for a month, he might not be able to figure out all the formation nodes of the myriad Gu altar. Damn it, I only have 2 hours left. It is not enough time. I have no hope of seizing the myriad Gu altar. He was very anxious, but could not think of a better idea. At this time, Burial of Heaven's voice resounded in his mind, reminding him, Tianqing, since there is not enough time, you might as well stop observing the structure of the altar. The heaven-mending pearl helped you purify the Gu Dao divine power. You can use it as you wish without any side effects, nor will it harm you. You can try releasing the Gu Dao divine power and inject it into the myriad Gu altar. You can use the Gu Dao divine power to find the crucial formation of the altar, as well as Long Zai Tian's divine soul imprint. Ji Tianqing's mind shook, his eyes flashed with a trace of brilliance. He suddenly realized, that's right. Why didn't I think of this? Burial of Heaven, thank you for your reminder, you have really helped me greatly. Without further ado, he did not waste any time. He quickly released pure Gu Dao divine power and injected it into the myriad Gu altar. Shwa! Dazzling multicolored light shot out from his palms and immediately spread out in all directions, splitting into thousands of multicolored light pillars that drilled into the surrounding darkness. Those finger-thick five-colored light pillars flowed through the myriad Gu altar's internal meridians like water flowing through every orifice. Soon, many colorful grids appeared in the dark space around Ji Tianqing. Those grids were made up of dense, multicolored lines that outlined the structure of the altar's formation. As time passed, endless Gu Dao divine power gushed out of the heaven-mending pearl. The five-colored meridian diagram around Ji Tianqing continued to expand and extend, becoming infinitely large, intricate, and complex. In the past, the veins of these formations were hidden. If he wanted to identify them, he would have to spend a lot of time and effort. But now, the internal structure and veins of the altar were outlined by the five-colored light into a huge pattern. This pattern was like a pyramid. The bottom was wide, and the top was gradually narrowing, becoming narrower and narrower. Ji Tianqing could clearly see the structure of the altar. He could see the thousands of formation patterns and combinations. Right now, the myriad Gu altar no longer had any disguise or concealment. It was clearly presented in front of him. As expected of a Gu Dao divine artifact from the olden antiquity era, it is so mysterious and complex. If not for an essence spirit realm supreme expert, who could refine such an intricate divine artifact? No wonder Long Zai Tian relied on this treasure to rise rapidly and his strength soared rapidly. No wonder he could create all kinds of divine talismans and control so many heaven origin and soul refinement realm experts to become his lackeys. Ji Tianqing looked up at this 100-meter-tall pyramid-shaped structure made up of billions of multicolored lines and praised from the bottom of his heart. His eyes flickered with excitement. He smiled with gratification. I already know all the secrets of the myriad Gu altar. The core formation that controls the altar, and Long Zai Tian's soul imprint, I have found them all. Next, I will cast a spell to seize control of the altar and erase his soul imprint. From today onwards, this Gu Dao divine artifact will belong to me. He murmured confidently, his tone full of pride and dominance. With that, he flew into the dark sky above, cast a spell to break the spatial obstruction, and continued to climb upwards. He followed the dense multicolored veins and flew continuously inside the altar, casting spells to break one formation after another. Inside the myriad Gu altar, there were thousands of formations of various sizes, intertwined and overlapped, affecting and amplifying each other. There were a total of 18 core formations. They were the key to controlling the myriad Gu altar. Long Zai Tian had left his soul imprint in these 18 great formations. Ji Tianxing did not want to alarm Long Zai Tian too early, so he first started to break the 18 great formations, and then erase his soul imprint. He was fully focused on breaking the formation. He used all of his abilities to break the formation. Burial of Heaven also assisted him, constantly injecting energy into him, or providing suggestions to break the formations. Ji Tianxing was so busy with the great formations that he was completely immersed in it. He even forgot about the passage of time. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. He finally broke all 18 great formations, and was able to control pure Gu Dao divine power, controlling the operation of the 18 great formations. Right now, the myriad Gu altar was jointly controlled by him and Long Zai Tian. He raised his sleeve to wipe the sweat on his forehead, muttering with a solemn expression, 1 more hour, just 1 more step, and I will be able to completely control the myriad Gu altar. As he spoke, he released his vigorous soul energy, and started to erase Long Zai Tian's soul imprint. It was already dawn, the sky was about to brighten. In the Flying Dragon Palace's guest hall and plaza, there were still some guests who were drunk all night, and were still drinking. Long Zai Tian had just comforted the guests who were startled awake, and explained the reason to them. Most of the guests had returned to their rooms to rest, but a few influential city lords and wealthy family heads took the opportunity to get close to him. These city lords and family heads all had different intentions. They wanted to discuss cooperation with him, or to become his subordinates. There were too many people during the day and the banquet. It was not suitable to discuss such confidential matters. Now that everyone was asleep, they could discuss this matter in the study room. Long Zai Tian was talking with assurance, laughing and joking with everyone. Suddenly, he felt a piercing pain in his soul, and his body could not help but tremble twice. Everyone saw his strange expression, and showed a concerned expression. They all asked him what was wrong, if he was feeling unwell. But he remained silent, frowning with a gloomy expression. He released his soul energy to sense for a moment, and his expression changed greatly. Bastard! He actually dares. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and he cursed angrily. Ignoring the city lords and family heads, he flew out of the study room, and rushed to the hidden dragon palace at lightning speed. Seeing him leave suddenly, everyone was puzzled and worried. They looked at each other. They were full of doubts, and wanted to ask Long Zai Tian what happened. But they did not have the guts, nor the qualifications to ask. Long Zai Tian's speed was extremely fast, and he returned to the hidden dragon palace in the blink of an eye. He ignored the guards at the entrance of the main hall, and rushed into the main hall. He quickly opened the secret room's entrance in the corner, and went into the secret room's passage. Chapter 11:21. The 1,000-meter-wide secret room was still enveloped by the 5 ultimate formation. The secret room was dimly lit, and there were traces of a huge battle on the ground. However, the 100-meter-tall multicolored altar had already disappeared without a trace. Long Zai Tian looked at the empty secret room, completely dumbfounded. His body stiffened on the spot, his eyes opened wide as he stared at the empty space. After a while, when he came back to his senses, he was so angry that his body was trembling, and he roared furiously, "Ji Tianxing! You bastard who deserves to be hacked to death. You actually stole my 10,000 gu altar. How is this possible? He originally thought that with the 5 ultimate formation and the 10,000 gu altar, they would be able to unleash terrifying power. Ji Tianqing was suppressed in the 10,000 gu altar, and only death awaited him. There was no way he could escape. But now, 6 hours had passed, and not only was Ji Tianqing not dead, he even stole the 10,000 gu altar. Long Zai Tian could never have imagined such a shocking turn of events. He cursed furiously, and immediately used a secret technique, using his divine soul power to sense the 10,000 gu altar's aura, and to find its location. However, he made hand seals with both hands, and used the secret technique 3 times in a row, but he still could not sense the 10,000 gu altar's aura. As for the 10,000 gu altar's location, he could not sense it at all. His divine soul connection with the 10,000 gu altar was completely cut off. Ah! Ji Tianqing. You despicable beast, you actually erased my divine soul imprint. Long Zai Tian was so angry that he went crazy, and he roared hysterically, his eyes turning blood red. The 10,000 gu altar was his greatest secret and trump card, and it was more important than his life. Now that he could not kill Ji Tianqing, and instead let Ji Tianqing steal the 10,000 gu altar, he had truly suffered a double loss. Moreover, Ji Tianqing knew the secret of the 10,000 gu altar and the divine gu. The altar had fallen into Ji Tianqing's hands. He would definitely use the myriad gu altar to create an even bigger commotion. Long Zai Tian had a premonition that an even bigger storm was about to come. He would fall into a hopeless situation where he would be alone and without help. When he thought of this, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He clenched his teeth so hard that they almost broke. However, he knew that it had already happened. No matter how angry he was, it would be useless. The urgent matter now was to find a way to catch up to Ji Tianqing and take back the myriad gu altar. He just erased my divine soul imprint. He definitely hasn't run far yet. Long Zai Tian calmed down and muttered with a gloomy face. He quickly turned around and left the secret room. When he returned to the hidden dragon palace, the sky was already bright. A new day had arrived, but the atmosphere in the flying dragon palace was extremely tense. Long Zai Tian immediately gathered all the imperial bodyguard captains and commanders, and gave them an order to lead all the imperial bodyguards to search. Other than that, he also mobilized tens of thousands of flying dragon city guards, as well as the elite experts of a dozen forces, to search inside and outside the flying dragon city. He gave a death order. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to find Ji Tianqing and take back the myriad gu altar. When his order was passed down, the entire flying dragon city was bustling with noise and excitement. More than 30,000 city guards were divided into more than 300 teams of 100 people, and they searched the surrounding 10,000 miles of flying dragon city. More than 500 elite experts from more than a dozen forces were also divided into dozens of small teams, and they carried out a carpet search in the city. The entire flying dragon city had entered a state of martial law. All the city gates and important roads were heavily guarded. Early in the morning, flying dragon city was in chaos. The atmosphere was extremely tense, and the situation was very grim. When the citizens in the city saw such a scene, they were all shocked and puzzled. They all discussed and asked about what had happened. When the thousands of guests in the Flying Dragon Palace woke up, they also found that the atmosphere in the palace was tense and stifling. Everyone was puzzled. What had happened? Many people guessed that the loud sound they heard last night was not caused by the third prince's cultivation, but because something had really happened. Countless guests had a premonition that something big must have happened in the Flying Dragon Palace, which was why the third prince was so furious. Everyone was afraid of getting into trouble, so they all bid farewell and left the Flying Dragon Palace as soon as possible. However, the third prince closed the door and did not see anyone, nor did he allow the guests to leave. Not only did the Flying Dragon Palace activate the defensive formation, they also sent out countless guards to guard the entrance and the various exits. Over 1,000 guests were trapped in the Flying Dragon Palace, unable to leave for the time being. This caused everyone to be even more puzzled, and they felt that the situation was serious. Everyone discussed animatedly, secretly guessing and analyzing, and many rumors spread. In short, the entire Flying Dragon Palace and even the entire Flying Dragon City fell into a state of tension and chaos. Everyone in the city was searching for Ji Tianqing, searching for his tracks and whereabouts. But no one knew that he had not left the Flying Dragon City at all, and was even in the Flying Dragon Palace. When he removed Long Zai Tian's divine soul imprint, Long Zai Tian immediately sensed it, and his divine soul felt a piercing pain. He sensed that something was wrong, so he immediately rushed back to the Hidden Dragon Palace and entered the secret room to check on the situation. At that time, Ji Tianqing had just removed his divine soul imprint, shrunk the 100-meter-tall 10,000 gu altar to the size of a palm, and kept it in the sword world. The secret room was protected by the 5 ultimate heavenly formation, and its defense was extremely strong. Ji Tianqing did not have time to break the formation, and Long Zai Tian had already arrived. At the critical moment, he could only hide underground in the secret room, trying his best to restrain his aura and hide. Even though he had already seized the 10,000 gu altar, and with his strength, he could defeat Long Zai Tian. But this was not his ultimate goal. Furthermore, it was too dangerous to fight Long Zai Tian head-on. Flying Dragon City was Long Zai Tian's territory, and there were tens of thousands of experts in the city, as well as hundreds of martial arts experts. If he was discovered by Long Zai Tian, he would definitely be besieged by the experts in the city. After the matter blew up, he would not be able to distinguish between right and wrong, and his life would be in danger. Therefore, he chose to hide for the time being, avoiding Long Zai Tian's detection. After Long Zai Tian entered the secret room and discovered that the 10,000 gu altar had disappeared, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood and lost his mind. Under such circumstances, he was not rational and calm enough, so of course he did not discover Ji Tianqing. After confirming that the 10,000 gu altar had been stolen, he hurriedly left the secret room and mobilized the guards and experts to search for Ji Tianqing's traces. After he left the secret room, Ji Tianqing quietly broke the 5 ultimate heavenly formation and silently escaped from the Flying Dragon Palace. He used the Earth Escape technique and traveled 1,000 meters underground, escaping from the Flying Dragon City at a leisurely pace. Although there were tens of thousands of city guards and dozens of elite experts searching for him everywhere, no one could detect his traces. However, no one could probe 1,000 meters underground, and no one could discover his aura or traces. Chapter 1122. At the same time, Long Zaitian finally calmed down. After careful consideration, he realized that he might have been blinded by his anger. At that time, the situation was urgent. Ji Tianqing might not have left the secret room, but was hiding in a corner of the secret room. Thinking of this, he quickly returned to the underground secret room and released his divine soul power, carefully searching every inch of land and space. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing was already several hundred li away. He was flying high in the sky, returning to Central Continent City. The result was obvious. Long Zaitian spent an hour, turning the secret room upside down, but still could not find Ji Tianqing. He was completely enraged and went crazy, cursing and roaring crazily in the secret room, waving his fists wildly, smashing the secret room into smithereens. An hour later, he walked out of the secret room with a gloomy expression, his aura as cold as ice. After a round of crazy venting, he finally calmed down, regaining his usual wisdom and calmness. He predicted that the 10,000 gu altar would be stolen, and there would be a series of consequences. Ji Tianqing would definitely use this as a pretext to take revenge on him, killing him and ruining his reputation. Thus, after careful consideration, he began to make arrangements in advance, minimizing losses and reducing the impact of this matter on him. Some plans needed to be suspended and terminated, some things needed to be done as soon as possible. There were also some people that needed to be eliminated as soon as possible. After all, he had too many sins and flaws that needed to be covered and erased as soon as possible. When Ji Tianqing returned to Central Continent City, it was already noon. He went to Flying Dragon City this time to participate in Long Zitian's birthday celebration, which was a huge risk. But the greater the risk, the greater the reward. What he had gained was simply a huge surprise. After returning to Tianqing Palace in the monarch residence, he sat in the study room to rest, taking out the 10,000 gu altar and playing with it in his hand. I really did not expect that after so many twists and turns, it finally became the current situation. I originally thought that Long Zitian was sinister and despicable, extremely shrewd, and very difficult to deal with. I had to spend a lot of time carrying out the plan step by step, cutting off his wings bit by bit, and finally killing him. I didn't expect him to be in such a hurry to get rid of me. Instead, I seized the opportunity to take drastic measures against him. Hee. Now that the trump card is in my hands, Long Zitian's death has arrived. He muttered to himself as he held the 10,000 gu altar in his palm, releasing dazzling 5-colored light. Long Zitian was able to control Duanmu Huang, Murongzheng, the divine generals of the West Wilderness, the patriarchs of the grand clans, and those powerful city lords because of the 10,000 gu altar. Those people had been poisoned by him. If they didn't want to die, they had to listen to him. Now that the myriad gu altar is in my hands, I need to quickly refine this gu path divine artifact and gain full control over it. As such, those who have been poisoned must obey my orders, or they will die from the poison. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. In his mind, he already had a plan to deal with Long Zitian. However, to carry out that plan, he had to refine the myriad gu altar first. After making up his mind, he summoned the housekeeper and gave him some instructions. He was about to enter a secret room to cultivate in seclusion. However, the housekeeper told him that the guards of Cloud Soul Palace had sent a letter to him yesterday evening, and the housekeeper had to hand it to him personally. He took the letter back to his room, opened the sealed envelope and took out the letter inside. There were a few lines of beautiful words written on the high-quality golden phoebe paper. It was Yun Yao's handwriting. Tianqing, I have already woken up a few days ago. My body is currently in excellent condition, and there is nothing wrong with it. Please do not worry about me. This disaster has passed, and I have also benefited from it. I have fused with the Neptunian Divine Pearl's power, and my strength has increased tenfold. I have reached Heaven Origin Stage 9th level. I wanted to return to the monarch residence immediately and share this joy with you. However, I know that you have many things to do, and you can't split yourself. Moreover, my cultivation has increased tremendously, and my martial arts foundation is unstable. I need to go into seclusion for a period of time to stabilize my cultivation. I will stay in Cloud Soul Palace to recuperate. You don't have to worry about me. Just take care of your own matters. After I finish my seclusion, I will return to the monarch residence to look for you. We will talk face to face then. After reading the contents of the letter, Ji Tianqing put it away and revealed a face full of smiles. His eyes surged with gratification and surprise. This is great. Yao Yao has finally woken up. He didn't expect that she would benefit from the disaster and reach the 9th level of the Sky Origin stage after that. This has saved her 10 years of hard cultivation. With her talent, she will be able to reach soul refining stage in a year at most. He was filled with excitement and joy for Yun Yao. After a while, he calmed down and went into the study to write 3 secret letters. He asked the housekeeper to send 2 of the letters to Cloud Soul Palace. The first letter was for Yun Yao, and the second letter was for Yun Zhongqi. In the letter, Ji Tianqing mentioned that he went to the 3rd prince's birthday banquet and took away the 10,000 gu altar. He told Yun Zhongqi about his plan and asked Yun Zhongqi to help him deal with Long Zitian. As for the 3rd letter, it was for Long Yunshao. The contents of the letters were similar. He told Long Yunshao about what happened and asked Long Yunshao to help him carry out his plan. This time, he wanted to use all his strength to crush Long Zitian. He would not give him a chance to turn the tables. After the housekeeper left with the 3 letters, he went into the secret room and focused on refining the 10,000 gu altar. The structure and control of the 10,000 gu altar were extremely profound and complicated. However, he controlled the pure divine power of the Gu Dao. He could use the divine power of the Gu Dao to refine the altar and save a lot of trouble. For 5 days, he cultivated in seclusion in the secret room and refined the 10,000 gu altar. After 5 days and 5 nights of cultivation, he completely controlled the 18 core formations and left his divine soul imprint in them. From now on, his life soul was connected to the 10,000 gu altar. The 10,000 gu altar had truly become his magic treasure. He could use and control it as if it was his own arm. Of course, magic treasures above the soul realm all had their corresponding control techniques. He did not have the technique, so he could not use the full power of the 10,000 gu altar. He could not use many of its effects. However, he was not in a hurry. He had plenty of chances to find the technique in the future. On the morning of the 6th day, he ended his seclusion and walked out of the secret room. When he returned to his room, a guard came to report that the Cloud Soul Palace Master and the Emperor had arrived and were waiting in the study. He smiled, and his eyes shone with anticipation. He quickly walked to the study. Chapter 11:23. In the antique study room, there was a bronze incense burner emitting smoke. The warm morning sun shone through the window into the study room, reflecting a golden color on the floor. Yun Zhongqi, who was wearing a purple robe, and Long Yunshao, who was wearing a golden robe, were sitting at the table, talking in low voices. In all these years, the 2 of them had not met many times. The last time they met was at Miracle Dr. Bailey's birthday banquet. However, the 2 of them did not talk much. The 2 of them wanted to avoid arousing suspicion, so as not to embarrass Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. After all, Ji Tianqing was the son-in-law of Cloud Soul Palace. Now, the 2 of them were meeting again in Tianqing Palace because of Ji Tianqing's letter. Yun Zhongqi was in a good mood. He smiled and stroked his beard. He praised, "I really did not expect Tianqing to give us such a big surprise. For so many years, the 3rd prince has controlled the Duanmu and Murong families. He has always been aggressive and wanted to destroy Cloud Soul Palace. I originally thought that it would take us many years to defeat the 3rd prince and completely get rid of this problem. It would also hurt us greatly. I did not expect that Tianqing would use such a simple and violent method to take away the 3rd prince's trump card. Tianqing is our Yun family's lucky star. He will save and change the fate of Cloud Soul Palace." Yun Zhongqi was very satisfied with Ji Tianqing and praised him. Long Yunshao also nodded in agreement. He smiled and said, "Ji Tianqing is not an ordinary person. He is very talented and his way of doing things is unpredictable. He can always create all kinds of miracles. Long Zai Tian is this monarch's greatest enemy. In order to contend against him, this monarch has worked hard for 10 years. I originally thought that it would take at least 10 years to completely defeat Long Zaitian. I did not expect that Ji Tianqing would hit the nail on the head. This time, he will definitely take Long Zaitian's life." Yun Zhongqi smiled again and asked, "Emperor, how are your preparations going?" Long Yunshao nodded and said in a playful tone, "The matter has been settled. We're just waiting for Tianqing to appear." "Uncle Yun, what about you? Have you gathered everyone?" The corners of Yun Zhongqi's mouth curled into a mocking smile. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Humph. Of course, they are all here. They are waiting in the city. There will be a good show to watch later." After saying that, the 2 of them looked at each other and smiled, revealing a look of anticipation. At this moment, Ji Tianqing arrived and walked into the study. "Father-in-law, son of heaven, sorry to keep you waiting." He walked up to the 2 of them and cupped his hands in greeting. Yun Zhongqi hurriedly beckoned for him to sit down beside him. "Tianqing, you've finally come out of seclusion. The things you asked me to arrange have already been prepared. The Son of Heaven side has also been deployed. We're just waiting for you to come out and take charge of the situation. Ji Tianqing smiled and asked with concern, Father-in-law, when you went to gather those people, it must not have been very smooth, right? Yun Zhongqi nodded and said with a cold smile, yes. Long Zitian's lackeys did not believe it at first. They still had hope in their hearts and pretended to be confused with me. However, the changes and turmoil in Flying Dragon City were too big. The news had already spread throughout the central state. When those lackeys heard the news, they couldn't sit still anymore. They contacted me one after another to discuss this matter with me. Now, they are all gathered at Wang River House, waiting for you with a heart full of anxiety. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. Long Zitian's power is deeply rooted and his prestige is very deep. It is not something that can be eliminated in 3 to 5 days. If I'm not wrong, the people you gathered this time are all small fries, right? The 2 big mountains under Long Zitian's command must not have come, right? Yun Zhongqi withdrew his smile and said with some righteous indignation, Tianqing, you guessed right. That old bastard Murong Zheng did not even care about my letter. Also, Divine General Yu Tianhong pretended not to know anything and did not react at all. Ji Tianqing said with a cold smile, hee. They are all tyrants of a region. Of course they can keep their composure. How can they submit so easily? However, this is also within my expectations. It will not affect our plan. Let's go to Wang River House and deal with those small fries first. As for Murong Zheng and Yu Tianhong, I will go find them personally. After that, the 3 of them discussed some more plans and reached a consensus. The 3 of them left Tianqing Palace together and flew out of the monarch mansion. They rushed to Wang River House in Central State City. Wang River House was located on the bank of a large river in the south of the city. It was an ancient palace with 1,000 years of history. It was also a landmark building in Central State City. For nearly 200 years, Wang River House had been the property of Cloud Spirit Palace. It was also a branch of Cloud Spirit Palace in Central State City. Wang River House was heavily guarded both inside and outside. No one was allowed to come close. It was very safe and secretive to discuss important matters there. Ji Tianqing, Yun Zhongqi, and Long Yunxiao arrived at Wang River House and went straight to the conference hall. Outside the meeting hall, there were more than 30 guards standing guard. There were more than 100 guards around, either overtly or covertly monitoring the surroundings, strictly protecting the conference hall. In the spacious and bright conference hall, there were more than 60 martial arts experts gathered. All of them were wearing luxurious clothes and had a dignified aura. These people were all famous tyrants of Central State. They were either the family heads of wealthy families, city lords, or the leaders of gangs. Normally, these people would be the focus of attention wherever they went. They were very imposing and dignified. When they gathered together, they talked loudly, exchanging pleasantries and flattering each other. They were all the upper-class people of Central State City. However, at this moment, these 60-plus experts all had their heads drooped, dejected, terrified, and uneasy postures. They stood in the conference hall with their hands hanging by their sides. They were listless like frosted eggplants. They did not talk and could not squeeze out a smile. The conference hall was very quiet. These experts were like prisoners waiting to be sentenced to death. When Ji Tianqing strode into the hall with Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunxiao, everyone raised their heads and looked at him in unison. Everyone looked at him with eyes full of respect and fear. Ji Tianqing glanced at the people in the conference hall and walked toward the main seat. Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunxiao followed beside him and explained the situation to him as they walked. Tianqing, according to our investigation and the information we have, the third prince has more than 200 factions under his command. Most of the leaders of the factions have joined him because of benefits and have not been poisoned. Only these 60 or so people are more powerful, so the third prince has given them special treatment and has planted all kinds of goo in them. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He walked to the main seat in the north of the conference hall and stood still. He did not sit down. Instead, he looked down at everyone with a powerful aura. After the 60-plus powerful warriors all lowered their heads in fear, he said with a cold and deep voice, "You are all famous and powerful warriors of the Central Plains, and you are all smart people. You all know the reason why you are gathered here today, so I will not repeat it. Now, your lives are in my hands. I only need a thought to kill you all. You will turn into a pool of blood on the spot. Not even your bones will be left." As he spoke, he slowly stretched out his right hand. A 5-colored light flashed in his palm, and a 2-foot-tall 5-colored altar appeared. The 60 or so experts in the conference hall all looked at the 10,000 gu altar with fear and horror in their eyes. At this moment, when they saw the 10,000 gu altar with their own eyes, they could finally confirm that the news from Flying Dragon City was true. The third prince's trump card was really taken away by Ji Tianqing. Chapter 1124. The main hall was silent and the atmosphere was oppressive. More than 60 powerful experts were trembling in fear and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Their lives were in the hands of Ji Tianqing, and in their eyes, Ji Tianqing was a temperamental and arrogant guy. They didn't know Ji Tianqing's purpose and couldn't guess what Ji Tianqing wanted to do. Ji Tianqing looked at everyone expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "Although I control your life and death and can kill all of you with a thought, you should be thankful. I'm not a bloodthirsty person and I don't care about the power and wealth in your hands. I've gathered you here today to give you an order. I want you to do one thing. It's very simple and won't make you suffer, nor will it harm your power and wealth." At this point, the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer and he said in a playful tone, "You have to jointly submit a memorial to the imperial court. Write down all the dirty deeds and evil deeds that you have done for Long Zitian and present them to the imperial court. I know that most of those heinous deeds were done by Long Zitian, who threatened you. It wasn't your original intention. Now, I'll uphold justice for you. Write down the ins and outs of the matter in detail and hand it over to the imperial court for judgment." Hearing his words, more than 60 experts' faces suddenly changed and revealed looks of horror. "What? We want to jointly expose the third prince's crimes? How is this possible? If those things are reported to the imperial court, none of us will live. The third prince's power is deeply rooted and far beyond our imagination. He also has his eyes and ears in the imperial court. Even if we tell the truth and submit a memorial to the imperial court, I'm afraid it will be intercepted by the third prince and then we will all be eliminated by him. No. This matter absolutely cannot be done. I will not sacrifice all my life to do this." More than 60 experts were whispering to each other. They were very opposed to this matter. If Ji Tianqing only wanted to control them and make them swear loyalty to him, then things would be much easier. In any case, it didn't matter who they were loyal to or who they worked for. It was just a change of master, so there was no loss or psychological burden. However, they would never dare to complain to the imperial court about the third prince's crimes. Ji Tianqing had already expected such a reaction from the crowd, so he wasn't surprised or angry at all. He swept his cold gaze across the crowd and saw a short and fat middle-aged man in a brocade robe who was resisting the most fiercely. Not only did this person shout angrily, but he also instigated others to resist this order. Ji Tianqing frowned and secretly activated the myriad gu altar, unleashing an invisible gu Dao divine power and detonating the gu poison in the middle-aged man's body. The middle-aged man was talking loudly, full of righteous indignation, trying to persuade the other two patriarchs not to submit. Suddenly, a series of crackling sounds came from inside his body, like the sound of soybeans being fried. His body shook and stiffened on the spot, black blood gushing out of his mouth and nose. He twisted his body with difficulty and widened his eyes, looking at Ji Tianqing with resentment. However, he could no longer make any sound. After a few gurgling sounds came out of his throat, he fell to the ground on his back and stopped breathing. Next, white smoke rose from his corpse, and it quickly corroded and festered. In just 10 breaths, his flesh and bones were completely corroded, turning into a pool of black blood. The hall was suddenly filled with a pungent smell and the smell of blood. The noisy crowd witnessed this scene with their own eyes. They were so scared that their faces turned pale. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they all retreated far away. The word death was said very lightly, as if there was nothing to be afraid of. However, everyone saw with their own eyes that a living person died in an instant, corroded into a pool of blood in the blink of an eye. Such a strong shock and impact, how could they not feel fear and respect? Those powerhouses who were shouting about disobeying the order all shut up obediently. They felt uneasy, afraid that Ji Tianqing would kill them on the spot. Ji Tianqing's eyes swept across the crowd, and he shouted expressionlessly, "I, Ji Tianqing, am not a cruel and bloodthirsty person, but I am definitely not a soft-hearted kind person. What I said just now is an order. You have no room to bargain. Whoever dares to resist will have the same ending. Don't try to fool me. If you agree on the spot, and then disobey in public, then you will still die, and not even your bones will be left." His tone was as gloomy as ice, containing an awe-inspiring majesty, making more than 60 powerhouses tremble and feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. After a moment of silence, some people who knew what was good for them hurriedly expressed their opinions. "Don't worry, Regent Lord Tianqing, we will follow your orders and write a memorial when we return. Regent Lord Tianqing, everyone in Central State knows that you are the #1 genius of our clan, noble and virtuous, and we are willing to pledge our loyalty to you. From now on, Regent Lord Tianqing, you are our master, we will do whatever you ask us to do." With someone taking the lead, there were others who followed suit. The hall immediately became lively, and more than 60 powerhouses expressed their opinions. The remaining few who were still hesitating did not dare to anger Ji Tianqing, and they reluctantly expressed their promises. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied with the crowd's performance, and he nodded slightly. "Very good. Since you are so sensible, then carry out this matter as soon as possible. If anyone dares to dawdle or disobey in public, I will let them suffer endless pain and torture, and die in torment and despair. Of course, as long as you perform well, after this matter is over, I will remove the poison in your bodies one by one, and return you your freedom." Hearing his last sentence, many powerhouses widened their eyes in disbelief, and they exclaimed, "What? Remove the poison and return us our freedom? This can't be true, right? Did I hear wrongly? Regent Lord Tianqing is so kind, and he wants to remove the poison curse for us? That's great. It seems that Regent Lord Tianqing is not lying. He really doesn't care about our little power and wealth, and he doesn't care at all. Regent Lord Tianqing, if you are really willing to remove the poison, you will be our benefactor. What are you hesitating for? We have to follow the orders of Regent Lord Tianqing, submit a memorial to the imperial court, and completely expose that treacherous and despicable bastard, the third prince. In order to no longer be tortured by the poison, and for freedom, I will risk my life to expose the third prince to the imperial court." Hearing that Ji Tianqing was willing to remove the poison, more than 60 powerhouses were wild with excitement, and they were so excited that they spoke incoherently. They were both in awe and grateful to Ji Tianqing, and they no longer dared to resist. Chapter 1125. After the matter was settled, over 60 experts left the Riverview Tower one after another. Everyone hurried back and prepared to submit a memorial to the imperial court. Ji Tianqing, Yun Zhongqi, and Long Yunshao also left the discussion hall and entered the study. After the three of them sat down, they discussed this matter. Ji Tianqing said to Yun Zhongqi, "Father-in-law, the leaders of these 60 forces are scattered all over Central State. You need to let the spies of the Hidden Cloud Pavilion secretly monitor their movements. If anyone dares to report this to Long Zai Tian, kill them on the spot." Yun Zhongqi nodded, "All right, leave this matter to me." Ji Tianqing looked at Long Yunshao and said, "Son of Heaven, there are also Long Zaitian's lackeys and spies in the imperial court. I need you to deal with these people. The 10,000 gu altar has been taken by me. Long Zitian will definitely be able to guess my plan and will definitely make preparations in advance. The memorials that the nobles and experts submit to the imperial court will most likely be intercepted by his lackeys. Before he finished speaking, Long Yunshao understood his meaning and quickly nodded. Tianxing, don't worry. I will immediately return to the imperial court to keep an eye on them. I guarantee that the memorials of those nobles and experts will be delivered to the imperial emperor's desk safely. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. That's good. Then I will have to trouble you. After saying that, he bid farewell to Yun Zhongqi and Long Yunshao and left the study. More than 60 rich and powerful families had been taken care of. Of the two powerhouses under Long Zitian, only Murong Zheng of the Murong family and the divine general of the West Wasteland, Yu Tianhong, remain. Murong Zheng was the patriarch of an ancient family. He had a special status and was very powerful. Ji Tianxing also killed Murong Lingfeng and had a blood feud with the Murong family. Therefore, he could not go to the Murong family and persuade Murong Zheng to change sides. His only target was the divine general of the Western Wilderness, Yu Tianhong. After walking out of Wang River House, he did not return to the imperial residence. Instead, he flew out of Central State City and rushed to the border of the Western Wilderness. It was time for revenge. He still hadn't forgotten that 2 months ago, he had been hunted down by Demon Commander Dark Knight. He had desperately fled to the outskirts of Mang City, but Yu Tianhong had refused to let him in. He remembered Yu Tianhong's expression and every word he had said at that time. Before he left Mang City, he had said something to Yu Tianhong. One day, I'll make you regret what you've done today. At that time, even if you kneel down and beg me, it'll be useless. Now, it was time to fulfill those words. When Ji Tianxing had left the boundless world and returned to the central continent city, it had taken him half a month's time. However, things were different now. Relying on his profound cultivation, he was able to control the soul magic sword and travel at a speed that was twice as fast as before. 5 days later, he arrived at the border between the Central Plains and the West Wilderness and entered the Mangum mountain range. That evening, he arrived at the outskirts of Mang City and landed on the summit of a 10,000-meter tall mountain. He wasn't in a hurry to enter the city. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the peak of the mountain and silently meditated to recover the energy he had consumed. The night sky was dark and there were only a few stars that shone faintly. The Mangum mountain range was quiet and gloomy. Occasionally, the roars of some demonic beasts could be heard. In the majestic Mangum mountain range, there were specks of lights that shone like stars. On the majestic city walls, there were many teams that were patrolling and cruising. Everything went on as usual. With the power of the 1,000 venomous insect altar, Ji Tianxing could clearly sense that there was a venomous insect seed in Mang City. There was no doubt that it was a divine venomous insect seed that was planted in divine General Yu Tianhong's body. He meditated for an entire night and consumed hundreds of spiritual stones to recover his energy to the peak. The next morning, when the sun rose, he left the mountain peak. Swoosh! He turned into a stream of light and flew across the sky to the huge city gate of Mang City. When he landed at the city gate and revealed himself, the guards on the city wall immediately drew their swords and looked at him warily. Who's there? How dare you barge into Mang City? Are you not afraid of death? A guard commander on the city wall stared down at Ji Tianxing and asked in a dignified voice. Ji Tianxing glanced at him expressionlessly and said in a low and dignified voice, "Go and report to Yu Tianhong that I, Ji Tianxing, am here. Ask him to come out and see me." Hearing his words, the expressions of the guards on the city wall changed drastically. Everyone revealed shocked and puzzled expressions as they began to whisper to each other. Ji Tianxing? Why is it this guy again? Last time, this guy was chased by the demon race experts and fled here. He begged Divine General to open the city gate. Why is he here again today? This is unbelievable. Didn't he get killed when he was chased by the demon race experts? How can he still be alive? This guy is too arrogant. How dare he call Divine General by his name and be disrespectful to him? Commander, what should we do? Should we capture this guy or report the news to the immortal general? The guard commander was also hesitant and conflicted. He frowned and thought for a long time before he finally made up his mind. No matter what, this guy is the Tianshan region lord, the prince of the monarch mansion. We can't afford to offend him. Even if he is disrespectful to Divine General, we don't have the right to capture him. The only thing we can do now is to report to Divine General and let Divine General resolve this matter himself. Many of the guards expressed their agreement with the commander's words. Therefore, the guard commander sent 2 guards to report to the city lord's mansion. Everyone stood guard on top of the city wall, gripping their weapons tightly, ready for battle. Ji Tianqing stood at the city gate with his hands behind his back expressionlessly. He looked down at the sea of clouds and the scenery below and waited patiently. After about a quarter of an hour, the 2 guards who had reported the news returned to the city wall in a panic. They rushed to the commander as fast as the wind. The guard commander quickly asked, "Did Divine General receive the news?" "What did he say?" The 2 guards' faces were very ugly. They avoided eye contact and stammered, "Divine General. He asked the guards to throw us out." After Divine General heard the news, he flew into a rage and told us to scram. It seems like he doesn't want to see Ji Tianqing. Hearing their answers, the guard commander noticed that their hair and armor were very messy, as if they had been beaten up. What should we do? The guard commander frowned and was in a dilemma. He pondered for a while with a solemn face, then made up his mind and said to Ji Tianqing, who was standing under the city gate, "Sir Ji Tianqing, our Divine General is busy with official business and has no time to entertain guests. Please leave, he will not see you." Ji Tianqing slowly turned around and looked up at the commander of the guards on the city wall. A meaningful sneer appeared on his face. "You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.